So I never had the intention of making a review or retrospective or whatever else this video is. In fact, I wasn't even thinking about Dark Souls until I basically played 3 Souls-likes back to back, and that got me thinking, how much has the genre changed since I last played any of the Souls games? The games I played that led to this are Lords of the Fallen from 2023, AI Limit, and Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. Now, why did I pick Dark Souls after playing these 3? It's quite simple. Each take inspiration from Dark Souls and build around it. Lords of the Fallen is the one that's the closest to the Souls games, but it has a greater emphasis on switching between Mornstead and the Umbral. It's very similar to Dark Souls 3, with combat being quicker while methodical. It's just fun, and I wish more people would play it, as the devs have really gone out of their way to make the game more accessible. More challenging for people through modifiers. Yes, there are a couple which make it easier, but also some that make it harder, such as withered healing and randomized enemies. AI Limit removed the stamina bar, a resource any Soulsborne player has to get used to, and replaced it with a sync meter, which makes it more of a risk-reward type of game, and you get to switch between stances. The first of which that you get is a counter, which is essentially parry. Everything can be parried, literally everything, and while none of the bosses require it, if you can master it, these fights become a lot easier. It's satisfying learning attack patterns, parrying, and punishing right after, as there are some bosses which also have a sync meter just like you, and once it goes down to 0, that leaves them extremely vulnerable. They take more damage, and don't have a way to respond until it finally fills up for them again. Lastly, Wu Chang provided me with something that none of the other Souls-like games could, even Dark Souls 2 and 3, and that's how connected everything is. While you can teleport from shrines, you can also just run there and take a route from where you need to be once you've unlocked the shortcuts. It honestly surprised me with how much effort went into it to make sure that everything connects so well, and that's something I feel only the original Dark Souls can provide. Wu Chang also has a mechanic called Madness, which adds difficulty. The higher this meter is, the more damage you deal, but the more damage you take. This meter is increased by killing regular human enemies or by dying. I could go on for a while about these games and go into more detail, but they aren't the focus of this video. They're just what made me think to myself, I think I might just play the Trilogy again. Keep in mind, my memory of playing the Trilogy has meshed into one, and I was deterred from playing Dark Souls 2 because of the negative reviews and videos people have made throughout the years, so Dark Souls 2 is the only one of the 3 that's a fresh playthrough. I'll be going into more detail about these games, not on just the gameplay or how the community feels, but also my initial feelings towards them while playing them for the first few hours. As I'm sure a lot of people can agree, when Dark Souls was still fresh, you had a lot of people that wanted to try out the game and then just drop it after an hour or 2 because of them being too hard. I played through the remastered version of the game instead of the Prepare to Die edition I have on Steam. Reason for this is quite simple. Blighttown. If anyone has played the original version, you will be familiar with the need for a mod to make it playable on PC, and I'm just too lazy to work around this. On the plus side, the remaster fixed the FPS issues of Blighttown, although one thing it did not fix was the soul duplication. Even years after launch, it's still there. I did exploit this for the sake of the video, just to have a head start. So let's start off with my initial few hours of the game, as it took some adjusting. As soon as I attacked, I was fully committed, and this led to situations where I died because I overextended. Not the fault of the game, this is literally what we call in the gaming sphere a skill issue. I did get used to it after a while, but I will stick to what I believed with it feeling clunky and dated. But there's a certain charm to this. It's a very simple game, there aren't any crazy or complex mechanics where you need to focus on a lot of things at any given time. I remember years ago when the game first came out on the PS3 and 360, my friends in college were talking about it for a whole year straight. The same thing was said by them. Dark Souls isn't hard, you just don't know how to play. And honestly, this is kind of on point, but at the same time, what the fuck? That can be said about any game. When you first boot up Dark Souls, you were given a tutorial which takes you through the Undead Asylum, and the end boss is the Asylum Demon. Very creative name, I know. You encounter this guy twice, the first with a broken weapon that just tickles him, and the second when you have your actual starter weapon from character creation. The first encounter with him left a lot of new players thinking, what do I do? Where do I go? This is intentional. Most games back then, even now really when you think about it, would just tell you what to do and where to go, and this was a reinforced feeling that players had as you were being led from place to place through the tutorial with messages being left giving you inputs to press. The linear design also helped with this feeling too. The first encounter with the Asylum Demon actually has a door to the left which is opened and you have to go through to get to the second half of the tutorial. Most players miss this during their panic, but once you see it, it makes you think there are times when going head on with an opponent isn't always the best option, or the only option really. Doesn't stop some of us though. Once you've escaped the initial encounter and obtained your starter set, you are then met with a fog wall. For the most part this indicates you'll encounter a boss, but not always, and this continues for Dark Souls 2 as well. After you've gone through the fog wall, you find yourself above the boss and you're able to do a plunging attack which does a huge amount of damage, making the fight a little bit fairer. I would also like to mention the second half of the tutorial can be skipped if you kill the Asylum Demon while doing 2 damage a swing. It'll take some time, but it is doable. When you finally beat him, you're introduced to the crow which takes you to the hub of the game, Firelink Shrine. Firelink is, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, incredibly boring and bland, but again this adds to the charm of DS1. Plus whenever I go to Firelink at any point of the game, I always get this feeling of warmth. It could be a sense of nostalgia, but I think the background music and sound design of the area adds to this. All sounds are emphasized, and it's really one of those places you could just sit for hours and just think. Or you could find a 10-hour video of the background music of Firelink Shrine. That probably makes more sense than having DS1 open for hours while doing nothing. You'll meet most of the NPCs of the game here, at least once you've encountered them elsewhere and progressed their story. From Firelink, there are 3 routes you can take. You can go left towards the bridge where the Undead Burg is. To the right you have the graveyard that leads to the catacombs and die to a bunch of guys that will literally launch themselves at you. Going this way will make you feel the game is unfair and hard because it's Dark Souls. Remember, this was a thing that people kept on saying back in the day, it's hard because it's Dark Souls, or my personal favourite when it comes to the cringe, you're not even a real gamer until you've played Dark Souls. This is the game telling you, hey, you're a little weak right now, go somewhere else. Obviously it won't actively tell you, but it will make you feel it. And by feel it, I mean you'll want to uninstall the game. The last of the 3 is New Londo, but it's not recommended and most new players wouldn't even know about this, so realistically speaking, you only have 2 options available to you. Although you wouldn't be able to go against Gravelord Nito in the catacombs, as this early in the game you wouldn't have the item to take away the barrier. So forget what I said, you only have one option, that's the Undead Burg. This is where I went as it was the intended route of the game, and where else can you go really? I just pointed out you can't go anywhere else. You will also find your first bonfire outside Firelink here. Keep this one in mind as this will come back later. You make your way through Undead Burg, go up the tower and come across another fog wall. You know there's a boss waiting as this was indicated back in the asylum, except this time, when you move through it, there's no health bar, in fact there's nothing in your way. You walk further and bam, Taurus Demon. He joins you on the bridge and you think you can fight the guy, except a single swing from him throws you off the bridge. You died. Gaming's unfair. Most people don't realize this initially, but there are 2 archers shooting at you from behind, which adds to the fight. You can actually deal with them before Taurus Demon even shows up. This is also a good spot to do plunging attacks against him, or you could just fight him there. Or, if you really want to be a baller, you can fight him on the bridge and make him jump back over the edge, instantly killing himself, getting yourself a quick and easy win. This happened to me once, and I have never been able to recreate it. I've seen videos of people doing it, copied it, but all I was met with was thinking that my version of the game is fucking with me. Anyway, you beat him and make your way down to another bridge where you are greeted with a dragon. You will always get hit by the initial breath. I have yet to see someone not take at least 1 hit from this. You would notice before going left to the bridge, there is an area to the right. This is where you meet Solaire. He's the guy. My guy.
What are you, gay?
You would have never met him if you didn't explore, and that's what Dark Souls and all other Souls-likes do, and that's encourage you to explore. Sometimes it leads to danger, like an Undead Burg with your first ever Black Knight encounter, or to goodies, like a chest with loot, a bonfire, or even the man, the myth, the legend. What it doesn't do is make Solaire warn you about the dragon that's about to turn you into a well-done meal. Going across the bridge and down the stairs, you were given a couple options. Continue going down or go through the archway and walk across the bottom section of the bridge. If you go down the second set of stairs, you will find yourself above the first bonfire you saw in Undead Burg. Kick the ladder down and you have a shortcut you can use. The game has now rewarded you for exploring the area. I can't stress enough how useful this would have been when I first played DS1. I actually did a long run back to the bridge like a dumbass. Going back up, you go across the bottom section of the bridge and encounter some more enemies, but completely avoid the dragon and get to the Undead Parish. Turning left will show you the bonfire the dragon is guarding, but behind portcullis, which can only be opened from the side the bonfire is on. Most people go right and encounter the real boss of this area. This fucking boar. I don't want to admit how many times this killed me in the past before I realised I could just go up some stairs to avoid him, or better yet, bait him to charge into fire, almost killing himself with it. If you're an epic gamer, you can do a jumping plunging attack to kill him, which I seem to fail at doing, so baiting into fire is what I tend to do. Did you know there's another way to deal with the dragon? If you hug the wall long enough, you can see the dragon jump forward. This lets you get past him without issue. Maybe take a hit, but you'll reach the bonfire and you can unlock the shortcut to the Undead Parish. Making your way through the parish isn't difficult. You are given another branching path. Either go to the right across another bridge. Man, this game really does have a thing for bridges. Or you can go left and into the chapel, which has a guy in armor with a giant shield waiting for you. I'll be honest, I saw him from the doorway and went across the bridge first. I wasn't mentally prepared to deal with another guy in black armor, especially after my first encounter with the Black Knight. Turns out going across the bridge finally led to safety. No demon ready to jump me, no dragon to burn me, just stairs that take me to a bonfire and the sound of clanking metal. But this didn't sound like enemies fighting, more something like an anvil being hit. This is where you meet the first of the 2 blacksmiths in the game that help you upgrade your gear. Andre is great. He won't go to Firelink, but you also don't need him to, as he sells you an item that allows you to upgrade gear from the bonfire directly. You will need him for infusing your weapon with an element and to upgrade gear beyond +5 when you obtain the required items to do this. You also think as you met another friendly NPC in the game, you can go through the door and think you're safe. Only you're met with the Titanite demon that will kill you, or you can run past it. They don't move fast, and given its size, it can't really escape the room either. How it got there in the first place is a mystery, but we don't question this game the same way we don't question Capcom about their really poor optimization of games. But we really should. I won't be talking about all the areas in the game, there are a lot and it will take quite a while to get through all this. So anyway, Undead Parish. This is where you'll fight the first real boss of the game. Like, real boss. The Bell Gargoyles. If you're human around the fog wall, you will see some writing. This is a summon sign. Sometimes it can be a player if you're online, but will always be an NPC for the area. And this one belongs to Solaire. Even if you don't care about him, which is impossible, he will help make the fight 1,000 times easier. Just look at how much one hit from him does against these guys.
That's a lot of damage!
Then once you're done with the gargoyles and ring the bell at the top of the tower, the first thing you see is some guy T-posing and asserting dominance. Nothing else to say really, I just wanted to show him as I found this quite funny. I thought he was bugged initially until I saw the gesture he gives and it's one of my favourites. So yeah, this is what the initial few hours of the game is. The game teaching you to look around, think of different ways to deal with enemies, not rushing into fights and taking your time. I love this, and when you think about it, Dark Souls is a turn-based tactics game but in real time. It has amazing atmosphere, the story isn't shoved down your throat or told to you directly. Item descriptions give you the lore and you piece together what's going on or what happened in the past by reading, or you could just ignore it and play the game. But everyone agrees the lore in the Souls universe is very intriguing and there are thousands of hours of videos out there talking about just the lore of the series. Some you can even sleep to. There are definitely some things I don't like about DS1, and oddly enough is to do with the second half of the game. The first half is you ringing the bells of awakening at the Undead Parish and the bell found after Quelaag's boss room. I just want to take a minute and say how much I hate Blighttown. It's horrible, you can fall to your death, it's dark, there are these motherfuckers shooting toxic darts at you which are different to poison. If you make a beeline to this place, you won't have anything to kill toxic, and status effects in DS1 last for such a long time is ridiculous. The fact there is a section at the bottom of Blighttown where it's like 10 of these guys is absolute bullshit. Someone at FromSoft must have been having a really bad day to put this in, or they want to see you suffer. Might be both. After ring the bells, you open the gate to the dumbest place in the whole game, Sen's Fortress. I know the lore behind this place, but seeing the walkway with giant swinging blades made it feel like I stepped foot into a cartoon villain's lair, like Sen's Fortress was designed by Dick Dastardly. It was emphasized when I saw the boulder squash one of these snake guys. Don't worry, he's okay, at least until the next boulder comes through. I've had about 3 playthroughs now this year, and I still don't like Sen's Fortress. The only thing that makes it bearable for me now is that I know it's actually really short, and I know exactly how to get to the Iron Golem quickly. You can also cheese this boss and make him fall off the bridge. I never could because I'm bad, but it can be done. I think by this point you would have noticed I've been using summons, and yeah, I don't care. There's a weird stigma in the Souls community about using summons, which, I get it, it's not technically you soloing a boss, but the game balances this by increasing the HP of the boss to accommodate 2 players fighting it. At least I think it does in DS1. I know for a fact the health pools increase for later games. Killing the Iron Golem unlocks the area everyone knows the game for. Archery bullshit. Yeah, Anor Londo is quite an interesting place. It looks pretty, but only because of the skybox. The more I think about Anor Londo, the less impressed I am with the place, and I think I figured out the reason for it. If you go back to Firelink and the Undead Burg, the area is quite big, loops back to itself and surprises you. Anor Londo doesn't have this, and I think this is where the game actually starts to have development issues, and things had to be cut. For anyone who doesn't know, the latter half of the game was rushed and there were some areas which suffered, but I think Anor Londo is where you first notice this. Don't get me wrong, it's still well designed and has connecting paths and a pretty neat use of elevation, a winding elevator which connects 2 bridges. That's right, more bridges. And this room, which gives people PTSD. I didn't have any issues with it this time, but the first time I played DS1 and got here, I was pushed off, kept swinging and momentum pushed me off, sneezed and fell off. Pain is what this area is, with a sprinkling of trauma. That's why this is the only footage I have of it, and why I never returned. Let's talk about Anor Londo's most iconic aspect. This. The archers and their homing missile arrows. Here's the thing. This is the only section where these archers are. It's so infamous that 2 guys with bows can make you seethe with anger and the entire internet just to basically fear Anor Londo because of them. I also fucked up the cheese. Don't get close to them like I did, keep your distance. Once they've drawn their sword, they'll run off the ledge. When he didn't fall, I instantly panicked. FromSoft knew this would give you a heart attack, so the reward isn't the bonfire, it's seeing Solaire.
Hello there.
This is also where the connecting paths in Analondo are, and they are very few, like a couple doors, but you get to meet the giant blacksmith who can change any plus 10 weapon you have into a boss weapon. Unless you use the boss soul, in which case you're a little bit fucked there. Although it'd be hard to believe a new player would actually use a boss soul, the item description even tells you that these can be used for weapons, just leaves out how. Here is where you encounter the dynamic duo. These two are still a bit of a challenge, especially if you become greedy, and you will. They will punish you, and playing locked on personally feels like you're adding more of a challenge to yourself. Ornstein or Smoke could be out of view and hit you from behind while you're busy wailing on the other. At least that's what it should be. DS1 does have spaghetti code and the AI can't deal with certain things, such as Ornstein having no idea how to get closer to you and being hit with ranged attacks from mid-range. I have no idea why that's an issue for him, but it is. Then after you've got one of them down, the other powers up. I didn't want powered up Smo, but Soler was focusing on Ornstein, so I was forced to fight powered up Smo instead. It's not that he's hard or anything, I just wanted to get Ornstein's armor, which isn't available if Ornstein dies first. Now that I think about it, I don't think there's any other boss fight in the trilogy that changes rewards depending on who dies first. These two guard what we're all here for. So anyway, the Lord Vessel. This is where you need to unlock the latter half of the game in full and to get to the boss rooms. It's also the item that lets you travel between bonfires, which you'd think, yes, finally, but it only lets you travel between certain bonfires. You won't know which is a fast travel bonfire, so good luck figuring that out. Or you could go on something like Reddit and get the list. Did I still travel away from a bonfire I shouldn't have after checking the list? Maybe. Just a quick side note, the whole reason Guinevere is massive and has a chest big enough to flatten mountains is because Miyazaki asked for her to look big, as in grand. The designer of Guinevere made her big alright, but not in the way that he envisioned, and he just didn't have the heart to tell the guy that he did it wrong, so this character has existed because he didn't want to hurt someone's feelings. Apparently the designer was very proud of himself. This is where things can go differently depending on how you want to go about it, and also where the video could go all over the place, but no, I have structure. I decided the next thing I wanted to do was feel pain, the most painful fight in the entire series. Fighting Sif. I can't stress how much I don't like having to do this fight, not because it's difficult mechanically, but emotionally it's not fair, especially when you know the story behind Sif and why they're protecting a grave. To add to the emotional trauma you'll get, Sif starts limping and their attacks are sluggish once their health is low. Thanks FromSoft. So now that I've secured my place in Hell, we can use the Covenants of Artorias ring to get to the Four Kings fight, which I forgot to record, but also the whole area of New Londo. Yeah, structure my ass. Here's a poorly drawn image of New Londo and the Four Kings fight. Without this ring, you'd instantly die when entering the boss arena as you're fighting in the Abyss. Thematically, it makes sense to have the literal Abyss Walker's ring to walk in the Abyss, but gameplay wise, this is dog shit. It doesn't do anything to take up one of the 2 ring slots you have. I know you don't actually need armor or rings to beat the game, but they do help. After beating the 4 kings, we meet the second of the primordial serpents. This is Karth.
You one ugly motherfucker.
And he's the second you meet. The first is Framt. He's the one you meet at Firelink Shrine after ringing the first bell. Karth is more important, mainly because I went through a longer journey to get to him, but also he makes sure the other ending is available. Is what I initially thought. Turns out you don't need him, he's just there for additional lore. Okay, I'm downplaying the lore dump he gives, it's actually eye-opening and gives you a different perspective of things. So Karth swallows you, and spits you out a Firelink altar. This is where you place that shiny Lord Vessel you obtained from Analondo. This unlocks the boss rooms for the last 3 Lord Souls you need to get to Gwyn. It was at this point I decided to do the DLC. I wanted to fight Artorias and obtain his armor set. He's in the wrong game. Not that he doesn't fit, but his moveset is so much quicker compared to everything else you've been fighting you'd think he came from Dark Souls 3. I almost beat him on my first try but fucked up because I didn't think I was doing enough damage to knock him out of his power up phase. I didn't let this happen once, but twice. He already became harder the first time, the fact this happened twice, he was even quicker and way more aggressive. Like really aggressive. He might as well have been a crazed gorilla with a sword. It took me 3 attempts to beat him. I don't think this is a case of me just getting good, I know for a fact I was over leveled for him, at least in this playthrough. Now that we've beaten Artorias and are cosplaying him, I did beat Manus, just didn't record it, but here's an artist's rendition of the fight against him. And yes, I did rescue Sif, you'd have to be insane not to. I went back to the Undead Asylum to fight the Stray Demon. You actually catch a glimpse of this guy when you make your character and take your first few steps in the game. I killed the Stray Demon, then this random Black Knight just to get to the Peculiar Doll. This item lets you enter the Painted World from Analondo, and you know what? I fucking forgot to go there. This is the second character I made and I literally told myself to go there right after getting the doll, and what did I do? I decided to go to the catacombs and make my way past these wheel spinning guys just to get to Pinwheel. Honestly, there's not much to say about him. He's a joke of a boss. Literally touched him and he fell over, but he is the boss that allows you to kindle bonfires to the point you can have 20 Estus flasks, so I guess that's going for him. It's nice but not really needed unless you have the worst timing and can't dodge anything. I guess the only noteworthy thing for Pinwheel is the fact that he can drop you the mask that people use for the giant dad build. He's also the guy blocking you from this piece of shit area. You can't see anything and have to either use your left hand to hold a lantern that lights up the area in front of you, so no shield or second weapon, or replace your headpiece with an item you get from another one of the endgame areas. I went here first like a dumbass and suffered through this. Yep, I love this place. I met Patches, another staple in the Souls series, so much he's in Elden Ring as well. Got tricked because tradition, went to a deeper area, met the cleric lady from Firelink where she tells me her friends have gone mad, so of course I had to fight these two fuckwits in pitch black as blocking in this game is OP. I did kill Patches in the end, cause fuck that guy. Anyway, I'm going to skip the majority of Tomb of the Giants because all you'd see is nothing but darkness, and not the good kind either. Plus, I don't want to admit how long it took me to get through the area because I couldn't see shit, and I didn't want to get jumped by these giant dog skeleton things, which are extremely aggressive. Forget Artorias turning into a crazed gorilla with a sword, these fuckers are literally insane. I will show this death I had near the end of the area, however. I hate this place. I even knew about that giant skeleton. I don't know who it was that made this level, but Tomb of the Giants makes me see red. It's not even that long, it just takes a while to get through because you can't see anything. Your reward for getting through this godforsaken place is Nito. Cool design, and he's technically an ad fight similar to Capra Demon, only not as painful. Which is weird as Nito is one of the lords you have to beat, so the way you're meant to do this fight is by going up to Nito, killing his 3 small skeleton ads with a divine weapon as this will permanently kill them. Without one, they just come back to life. Nito can kill them off for you with his AoE, but they'll keep coming back. He also has a giant skeleton in the back of the area that's supposed to add to the chaos. That one can't be killed off with a divine weapon. How do you deal with all this? Just let Nito come to you. The big ad will never aggro, the small guys will be killed off by you or Nito, and Nito doesn't have much health either. A little disappointing when you think about it. He's one of the bosses that show up in the intro and he's mid at best. I may have been a little over leveled for this playthrough, but my first playthrough I was around soul level 65, but even then he was still fairly easy, and that's kind of like the average when it comes to when people actually go up against Nito. After beating him, I decided to make my way to Ceaseless Discharge. I'm not going to humour this boss too much, he's not much of a fight. This guy can be cheesed very easily by running to the fog wall, letting him slam his arm on the ground, hitting it 4 times and then his health bar just disappears. I'm not sure if this is the intended way or the cheese, it doesn't feel much different fighting him legit, and all the legit way does is extend the fight a little more. FromSoft really did just give up when it came to this. When people talk about the game being rushed in development by the end, this is where it's very noticeable and what most people talk about. I decided to skip Lost Izalith. I gathered the 30 humanity needed and offered them to the fair lady to unlock the door, which gets me directly to the bed of chaos. I did the duplication glitch for the humanity. I'm not farming rats like I did on my first playthrough. We're cheating because fuck going through Lost Izalith. I spoke about the areas of the game with my brother and he defends Tomb of the Giants, saying that it was intended to be designed this way and for it to be so dark, but even he can't defend Lost Izalith. It's an incomplete mess. The skip makes you so you don't have to fight the Centipede Demon and the Demon Fire Sage, which is just a red version of the Stray Demon. He's not even very fire resistant either. I know this because my first playthrough is when I used Quailag's weapon, which has split damage of both physical and fire. Literally just a copy paste of a boss, and don't even get me started with the bullshit that is Centipede Demon. The only good thing about that fight is you can summon Solaire, and this is where the skip has a downside. You can actually screw up the encounter order with Solaire, and I forgot he's met around the same area as Centipede Demon. This is a spoiler, but at the same time the game is 14 years old now, and Dark Souls is a game that was, and I quote from Liam Manley, a game where every copy should come with 3 to 4 older brothers. You should watch his video, it's really good, and I've also left the link in the description. So when I did the skip, I didn't do it just so I could avoid Centipede Demon and Demon Fire Sage, but also just to kill the Sunlight Maggot, which turns Solaire hostile against you. So the correct order is actually to beat Centipede Demon, then do the skip, that way you've secured Solaire as a summon for Gwyn. The best thing about the skip is it takes you directly to the Bed of Chaos. I cheesed this, fuck doing this legit. This doesn't deserve your time, and the devs thought the exact same thing as they actually provided you with checkpoints for it. This is the only boss that actually has checkpoints. Even FromSoft don't want you to suffer through all 3 phases each time you enter the boss room. Did I die because of the bullshit this boss is? Yes. Was there a lot of salt and swearing? Oddly no. I think it was a mixture of knowing it was actually bullshit I'm dying to, and that was also 1 in the morning, so I was fairly tired. Now we've got Seath. Yeah, no footage of Duke's archive in Crystal Caverns. By this point I was mentally drained and didn't have the energy to even press the record button. I'll describe it like this. Giant library, jail, snake people, crystal skeletons, crystal golems, giant crystals, and invisible bridges. It's not as cool or interesting as you think it is, neat concept, but it's really short. Seath is the dragon you see in the intro cinematic, and the one that betrayed his own kind because he was born without scales. The scales are a big deal to them as they're what give them immortality. I've watched a few videos about the lore to do with this. I'm going to talk about my own theory. I don't think the scales actually give immortality. The dragons ruled at a time when the first flame wasn't around, and time itself didn't flow the way it does. I think that because the literal concept of time not existing, that's why the dragons were immortal. Then, when the first flame came about, they realized that immortality was at risk. Seath being a dragon without scales was aware he wasn't immortal, and thought the lack of scales was the reason for it. Another reason for why I don't think the scales mean anything is that Seath harvested a lot of scales from dead dragons, but the scales were useless, supposedly only useful for the dragon that was born with it, but I don't think that's the case either. He did reach immortality, but this was through a crystal the dragons had under their possession. This is also in the boss arena. Technically it's a boss arena only because you force Seath to get there. You encounter him at the Duke's Archive initially, but it's a fight you have to lose to progress further. The actual boss fight isn't great either. Honestly, I feel FromSoft puts in giant bosses to try and intimidate you and hope you die because of that. I was trying to get the tail cut on him. I wanted the Moonlight Greatsword, a favourite of mine, completely useless for this playthrough as I haven't invested at all in intelligence, with smooth brain for this run, but I still wanted it because shiny. What I forgot was it's the tip of the tail I need to hit, not the base like I'm doing right now. This fight would have been over a lot sooner if I didn't focus on the tail cut. He is disappointing, not because of him being easy, but because he's such a big target you can mindlessly swing and take some of his health off, and because he's easy. Big bosses just do not work in these games. They fill up half your screen so you can't see anything but them, and staying locked on is hard mode. It literally screws up the camera. I could rant about giant bosses, but wait until we talk about DS3. First, let's talk about the final area and boss of DS1. Once you've beat all the Lord bosses and offered their souls to the Lord Vessel, you open the door to the kiln of the first flame. It's just ash. I don't know why I was expecting something else. I'm sure it used to look a lot better back in the good old days when things weren't so dead and miserable. I kinda like this though. The fact that it looks this way adds to the premise of the game. The big man himself, is he difficult? Only if you want to fight him the normal way like I did. He hits so hard that one of the best shields, I think it's one of the best shields, it's definitely one of the coolest looking shields, has most of your stamina taken off from a single hit, so he does hit hard, but if you've watched any DS1 playthroughs, you will always see him being parried. I wanted to fight him legitimately. I didn't want an easy win. I somehow survived with a pixel of health. Even zooming in, I still can't see that sliver of health that I had, but still died while using one of the best shields for physical defense. In the end, I decided to do the same as everyone else, parry him 4 times and win. At first glance, it's a disappointment, but when you think about it and the music in the background, you realize this might actually be the intended way the fight's supposed to go. Quinn's been here for a long time, a very long time. He sacrificed himself to keep the flame going, but clearly his mind's gone and he's hollow. You were never going to fight him in his prime, he was never going to be at full strength, and that is reflected in the music and his moveset. He doesn't have much, 3 swings, a grab, and a leaping attack. The song itself has a melancholy feel to it, gives the feeling this is where it all ends, and it does abruptly end after you get his soul, which kind of ruins the moment, but this is Dark Souls 1, the game that has spaghetti code on par with Final Fantasy XIV and is literally hanging on by a thread. It could have done with the music fading away slowly. I may have been ranting about how much I'm not a fan of the second half of the game, and yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the late game areas. I feel that we're missing something compared to the earlier stages, and that is all due to the fact they're all isolated from each other. Anor Londo doesn't connect to anything else, and I'm not counting the Duke's Archive because the only connection it has is a library that somehow connects to a crystalline forest that, geographically speaking, makes no sense. Tomb of the Giants is pitch black. No, not that one. It's just pitch black and intended to be like that. It makes sense as the only extremely dark area, but it feels too gamey. I skipped on showing the depths, but here's a clip of me fighting the Gaping Dragon. The lighting in this area is what you get throughout the entirety of the depths, and you don't need another light source to see. This place is literally the sewers. Blighttown is also dark, but you can still see stuff, and it's further below than the depths. I do love Dark Souls 1. There are so many things to like about it, the world design, how connected everything is, the lore, the gameplay, and how it teaches you to commit to every action you take, and the community. Yes, even the Get Good squad. Dark Souls is a game everyone should play, and I feel if you haven't, you're missing out. Just look at how many videos there are where people have titled it as Elden Ring Pro plays Dark Souls for the first time or whatever. This may have not been where it all started, that's thanks to Demon Souls. But Dark Souls 1 is what popularized what Demon Souls tried to do all the way back in 2009. Oh god, I'm old. The only bad thing about DS2 are the hitboxes and changes they made to dodging, not blocking, just dodging itself. They added agility and adaptability. The agility stat was tied to adaptability and dexterity, and this helped with your iframes and drinking animation. No idea why the drinking animation was tied to this, but whatever. People also say the game is badly designed because the hitboxes are terrible and hit you when they're nowhere near you. I agree, it's bullshit to be hit by an attack that's nowhere near you, but it turns out this is tied to when you actually dodged and had those iframes. You have less iframes in DS2 than DS1 from the start because of the adaptability stat being the lowest it can be. This leads to a disconnect between animation and the actual hitbox. It's stupid and annoying, but you can counteract this by raising your agility so it's around 95 or 99, I believe was where people suggested, or you could just roll at the right time and get good, as people used to say. Alright, you get a cinematic opening which explains what's happening and the reason for your journey, although it keeps telling you that you won't know why you're there. I'll be honest, I didn't care too much about the intro cinematic. There are people who hate it because it's basically telling you stuff, and in a Souls game, being told stuff is a big no-no. And there are people who analyze the intro and go into deep discussion about what it's talking about and hinting to the player. I wanted to skip the intro because I didn't care too much. It was kinda meh for me, but that's just me. I only have 2 brain cells after all, and remember, I did do the tail cut incorrectly for Seath. In DS2, you don't get to create your character at the start of the game. Instead, you get to move around a bit first before you get to this game's version of the Firekeepers, who instantly talk shit about your face. Sometimes old women have no filter. More exposition is given by them and point out you're an undead and you'll go hollow. They also explain about humanity and the need for a human effigy, which is this game's version of the humanity you can pick up from DS1. After making my character, this time a sorcerer, and the Firekeepers have explained the concept of the game's death mechanics, I make my way outside to fight this Hippoclops for souls, but also to get used to the dodge timings of the game. There is a tutorial area in DS2, but it's not like DS1 where you have to go through it. You can actually skip it if you wanted to, or only do part of it. When I first got to the end of the tutorial area and saw all these bloodstains, I legit thought there was going to be a boss I'd have to fight right at the end to get to the hub area. Nope, just blood pools for no reason. I know if you light up all those braziers, it summons a red phantom for you to fight. I didn't do this, but this is too much for a single red phantom, right? Once I got out of there, I saw what is universally agreed to be the best hub in the entire trilogy. Majula. I love this place, and the community posts and videos from people, it's hard for anyone to say they hate it. It's very calm and peaceful, just listen to the background music. Plus, I refuse to accept anyone talking shit about Majula. And just like Firelink Shrine, all the NPCs come here. It's actually got slightly more NPCs than Firelink by default, which makes it seem a little bit more lively too. Plus, one of the 2 blacksmiths in the game is already in Majula, so you can start upgrading your gear sooner. Although he's useless initially because he's locked himself out of his workshop, even though he could just get in through the window. You also meet the Emerald Herald here, commonly known as Best Girl. She gives you your first SS flask, only one, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. She's also the only way you can level up, which carried over to DS3 with the Firekeeper. I also want to say that DS2 was the only game in the trilogy that had alternative healing items like life gems instead of the usual Estus flask. A lot of people said it made the game too easy, and yeah, I can see that, but something to remember is you literally only get 1 Estus flask until you find more shards to increase the amount, and surviving on a single flask is a bit difficult. DS2 does have different paths you can take at the start, just like in DS1, only this time they are actually alternate routes you can take. You could go to the Forest of the Fallen Giants or Hyde's Tower. I went to the forest because it's technically the intended route, but Hyde's Tower is also viable, just the forest is easier. This also doesn't affect you backtracking because DS2 was where you could start traveling through bonfires from the very start of the game, and it's every single bonfire, not just a select few, and this is a much welcome change. As I made my way to the forest, I did some exploring. Well, as much exploring as you can do in a cave. I opened the chest, checked to see if it was a mimic. I'm not getting jumped here, only to find out I should have jumped. My first death, and it was to drowning. I was quite annoyed about that. It didn't seem necessary for the game to kill me this quickly with the environment, but hey, it's Dark Souls, it's hard. This is where the game had a bit of an issue with understanding why people like the original Dark Souls, but then again, DS2 wasn't developed by the same team that made DS1. We didn't like it because it was unfair and tricked you into deaths, we liked it because it was hard but fair. This death instantly made me feel that it was unfair with wanting to kill me. I could have looked around, sure, but who expects this so early in the game? Like, really? Anyway, now that I've collected my souls and look like the most disgusting thing to exist, you'd have noticed my max health has dropped slightly. This is a mechanic only DS2 has. Whenever you die, you lose a percentage of your total health until you use a human effigy. It caps at 50% unless you have the ring, in which case the HP loss is capped at 25%. You also get 4 ring slots so you can use that ring the whole time. I didn't though. I didn't feel like I needed to, and at the same time, I played this after playing through Wu Chang, which had a mechanic where you dealt and took more damage with each death until you reset the meter. It can be quite annoying early on in the game to have up to 50% of your health gone, but it's actually hinting at you to be a little slower and think more with what you're doing. Iframes are brought up a lot in conversations about DS2. You barely get any, and this isn't just for dodging. Fog walls, chests being opened, doors being opened, anything in DS1 which gave you iframes doesn't do it the same way in DS2. And this can be seen as a bad thing, but if you go in playing as if it's DS1, then yeah, you're in for a bad time and you'll call it trash. If you play DS2 the way it's supposed to be played, it's actually quite easy, just like with DS1. If you know the mechanics, you'll be having a much better time with it. I also want to mention that people have talked about the enemy placements for DS2 and call it unfair. The version I'm playing is the Scholar of the First Sin, which has changes compared to the original, but this section I'm showing is the same for both versions. This section has also been used as an example for the game swarming you with enemies to make the game feel unfair, because it's Dark Souls and this is what it's supposed to be like. I initially thought this was the case before I played the game. You can fight each one of these guys one-on-one, as they only aggro when you've stepped on them and woke them up, which is understandable. I'd also be pissed off if someone woke me up by stepping on me, unless it was the Emerald Herald. Fetishes aside, the game doesn't try to gank you. That's a misconception from people who either ran in not realizing the aggro range, or intentionally want to prove a point, so they go out of their way to lie about it, and it's always this section of the game or another section in the Lost Bastille. The one in the Lost Bastille was a little bullshit, I'll admit, but actually very easy to deal with, as you can funnel everyone through a door, making it extremely easy to deal with, and that's it. There aren't many sections apart from these two where you get swarmed by dudes. I did some exploring off camera, mainly because I wanted to get the sword I'm using as it's useful and the fire damage is very important for a shortcut that I wanted to unlock. This bar has explosive barrels which only explode when you attack them, just like the Ninja Turtle over here did. Fire in general do the same, and so I tried baiting this NPC to throw a firebomb at one. Just like with DS1, I saw people do it and tried recreating it, but clearly the game just wants to fuck with me, so I decided to hit the barrel myself instead. I'm pretty sure this is the first shortcut in the game you see that's like this. And this is a thing I hate. If you don't know it's a shortcut or how to get to it, you'll have to go the long way around each time you die. Because this is my second playthrough, I somewhat know what to do and where to go, just like how I avoided the slowest boulder in existence. Going back to where the shortcut was, on this platform is where you meet your first boss and an NPC which is reoccurring. The Pursuer. You can fight him here, and if you beat him, he won't be at his boss arena later on, which is a cool thing DS2 presents early. I didn't get to have my encounter like that, as he killed me, and it doesn't respawn at that location either, so he's definitely at his arena now. I made my way into this room. I have no idea why there are 5 ballistas here. They've never been shot in all the times I've been here. I like to imagine they can catch you out, but you have to really try, and I mean really try to get hit by it. This place is where you meet another of DS2's hidden door mechanics, the Pharos doors. Using a lockstone, which are a limited item by the way, will light up an illusionary wall for you to hit, and you think, oh nice, I get to find loot whenever I see these. No, you're actually wrong. Later on you will find more Pharos doors, which will give you nothing. Some of them even make environmental hazards, like filling the place you're standing on with a pool of poison. I do like this though. I can't open this door because it can't be opened from my side, but there are guys on the other side who will open the door for you. I found it funny at first, but realized after a while, this is the only place where NPCs will open the door for you. A missed opportunity. It could have led to other areas of the map and not just a small room. The illusionary walls have changed with the way they work too. No longer can you just hit or roll into the wall and it opens a location. You have to now interact with it and it opens. An odd change which led to people placing signs next to the walls. Another misconception people have and use as an argument for why the game isn't good is because of this. Having a sign or bloodstain in front of the illusionary wall will not make the game interact with those over the actual wall itself. There's a video by a guy called Illusionary Wall where he talks about this and shows how interactions in DS2 work. So the first boss you'll meet, the last giant. Giants look weird, and just like with any giant fights, they're boring and the tactic of hitting their leg is the way to go. I had 2 summons with me and it's soul arrow spam, which made it extremely easy and boring. I didn't have to dodge as much, but even without summons it'd be tedious. Seriously, giant fights aren't great, and this is one of those few fights where it's not a dude in armor. Instead, it's a giant naked guy. DS2 is notorious for the boss fights and majority of enemies being dudes in armor. I can understand why people wouldn't be a fan of that. After all, it's one of the least inspiring designs visually you can put into a game. However, I find it to be more interesting as humanoid enemies can have similar movesets to yourself with the possibility of the AI countering you. Similar to a fighting game when you have a mirror match, you have to outsmart the other person. Only the AI in DS2 is basic. With the last giant dead, I made my way back to Majula to level up and go to Hyde's Tower of Flame. When I first got there, I saw this lone Hyde Knight just sitting there and thought he would attack me. Nope, he's just chilling, looking very depressed, but he's got a very nice view at least. There's not a lot to see in this area, and it's actually really small for a location where it leads to a boss, but it's a really beautiful location. Once it's cleared and you're not being attacked, hard to enjoy the view when someone's beating on you. There are 2 bosses in this zone. The first, which is the boss most people will end up encountering, is the Dragon Rider. Bit of a misleading name, as he doesn't ride any dragons. His boss room is interesting, and this is something I've only seen in DS2. Some boss arenas can be changed. For Dragon Rider, you can expand the circular area so you don't run the risk of accidentally rolling off the edge, or you can keep it at the initial size and do the cheese by making him fall off the edge instead. I fucked this up, because of course I would, so I had to fight him on a smaller arena. But this is a nice feature DS2 has. The fact you can change aspects of the boss room to make it easier for yourself is nice. It reminds me of World of Warcraft and how the Ulduar raid had a hard mode for boss fights which wasn't activated by toggling from normal to heroic. Instead you had to go out of your way to make sure you fought the bosses in their hard mode format. Only difference is, for DS2 you'll have to go out of your way to make it easier instead. The second boss you find is the Old Dragon Slayer, or Ornstein as he is known by literally everyone. I can see why they put him in the game. He is recognizable and people love the duo fight. However, Ornstein alone and having the exact same moveset is very disappointing. I want to point out this is the 2nd out of 4 times you see Ornstein being shown throughout the trilogy. Now that I've cleared the tower, I've made my way to the next zone, which is No Man's Wharf. First thing you'll notice is it's dark. Oh no, another Tomb of the Giants situation. Nope, in DS2 you get given a torch and the fire from that can be used to light up braziers which stay on permanently. I've heard a lot of people talking about No Man's Wharf as being a bad area and horrible because it's dark. It's like they forgot the torch existed, and Tomb of the Giants. Here's the thing about the torch. It's always in your left hand, so anything you were dual wielding, two-handing or holding in that hand can't be used. Sure, that can be annoying. It should be even more annoying for me as I started off as a sorcerer, but it wasn't. My left hand was used for my sorcery catalyst. I didn't use a shield, and two-handing my weapon didn't happen often either. I'll admit, it can be quite annoying to have to switch from the torch to the weapon in your left hand, then back to the torch when you're done fighting, and have to get to the closest brazier to light it again. That is a pain, but you know what the great thing about No Man's Wharf is? It's also pretty small. It's just creative with the design and verticality being used effectively to make it bigger than it actually is. This is one of the better areas in the game just because it was designed so well around the new mechanic and gives the illusion it's a bigger zone. The boss for this place is also pretty interesting. First off, look at the design. It's weird and how challenging it is depends on which side you're fighting. Then there's the arena. You're in a ship with water inside. If you had a lightning weapon or use lightning spells, they would do additional damage as the boss is wet. The water level also rises the longer the fight goes on. I've not seen if it fills all the way to the point you'll drown, but I know you can go from shallow to knee-deep water, which will affect your movements, making you run slower and roll turning into a heavy roll regardless of the equip load you have. After beating Flexile Sentry, you go on a cruise to the Lost Bastille. This is the interesting thing about it. You can get there in 2 ways. The first is by this ship. The other is actually right after you beat the pursuer in his arena. There's a small crow's nest you can rest at where you are carried by a giant crow to another section of the Bastille, calling back to DS1 with your escape from the Undead Asylum. This place is exhausting. It's quite a big zone, and if you want to deal with all the bosses and get everything, then you'll be spending quite a lot of time here. The Bastille has a total of 3 bosses, the other blacksmith in the game, a covenant and one of the NPCs that will trade boss souls for weapons, but only select bosses. Needless to say, I was here for a while. There's quite a lot to go through, but let's start off with the stuff which makes it annoying and stupid. The second blacksmith, Andre Wannabe, is hidden behind a breakable wall, which can only be destroyed by a single barrel. If you get hit by the barrel, roll into it, or someone attacks it, you've lost access to him and the bonfire there, at least until you reset by resting at another bonfire. I hate this as it's a crucial area needed, especially if you want to infuse weapons with different elements. I know there is a locked door which you can't open with a key, but you know how you get this key? You have to beat the Belfry Gargoyles, which is a repeat of the Bell Gargoyles from DS1, only instead of it being 2, you have to fight 5 of them and it's time based, so you better hope you've been upgrading your weapons. What's even more annoying about this is in order to get to the Gargoyles you have to use a Feros Lockstone, but the room the door is in is with a Black Pursuer. He's not an issue, but he's a mini-boss. Only difference is, as he's the Black Pursuer, he's able to use magic. The actual Pursuer can do this too, but only when he grabs you and he gets powered up by doing this. Still easy to deal with, it's just annoying. Then once that is all done and you've made your way to the Gargoyles and beat them, you finally have the key to open the door when a single barrel is enough to avoid needing to go through all this effort. So I was wrong. I don't know why I thought you needed to beat the Gargoyles to get the key. Turns out you can skip this boss fight entirely, at least for the Scholar of the First Sin version of the game. Also, in order to get to the gargoyles, you have to beat the Ruin Sentinels, which require you to use a Fragrant Branch of Yore. This is another one of those limited key type items which removes the petrification status for NPCs. You will also need one of those branches for the NPC that trades boss souls for weapons. Lost Bastille is a really annoying place, not because it's long, but because of all the bad design decisions. Then there's the final boss, which is one of this game's 4 Lord bosses, the Lost Sinner. She's fought in complete darkness, and because the lock-on being based on range and visibility, her backstepping is enough to lose track. This is the harder way of fighting her. If you have the key, you can open the doors on either side of the boss room and light up the arena. This will make tracking her movements a lot easier and the camera won't go crazy on you. I didn't, because the gargoyles were killed after I did the Lost Sinner, so it was nothing but hell for me. The only good thing about the Bastille is you meet Lucatiel. You meet her in No Man's Wharf too, but I decided to mention her here because I forgot. She's the DS2 version of Solaire and makes things slightly better. She doesn't praise the sun, but her storyline is well told, and I made sure with both of my playthroughs I would complete it in the best way possible. Anyway, now that I lit one of the primal bonfires, I go back to Majula and make my way to the Humpman's Copse. I am indifferent about this place. It's surprisingly short, but it's also one of those connecting areas to a bigger zone, so I can't complain too much about that. I decided to make my way to the Skeleton Lord's fight first, which I'm pretty sure the background music for it is a DS2 version of This Is Halloween, or at least heavily inspired. I actually like this boss. You start off with 3 Skelly Lords, who after being killed will spawn Skelly Boys, Wheelie Boys, and slightly bigger and stronger Skelly Boys. Yeah, they ran out of ideas on that one. What's really good about this is you control how difficult it is, as the adds spawn only upon the death of a Lord, and each variant is dependent on which one you kill. The Copse has an optional boss, which is another I like in terms of design, but in design only. I do not enjoy actually fighting the Executioner's Chariot. It's not difficult, but you need to be good with your rolls and get lucky with beating the 2 Necromancers without being overrun by the skeletons in the arena. The chariot does damage to them, but they get up stupidly quick. This does feel like a fight that's supposed to be in a game where you have quicker movements or more brain-dead enemies. Although looking back at this and without having to deal with the frustration of it anymore, I like it as it's one of the more unique fights. After beating the Skeleton Lords, you can cross the bridge to get to Earthen Peaks, which is a poison-filled area, so yay! My favourite debuff. At least I get to meet Lucatiel again to progress her story and the Desert Sorceresses. Definitely didn't make a female character just so I could wear that armor set. The first boss you encounter here is the Covetous Demon, or Big Chungus. This is one of those bosses you fight which is definitely a filler boss just so DS2 can have a bigger roster. There's not a lot to say about this guy. He's extremely easy and I would be surprised if someone had died to him while actually trying to fight him and not doing some challenge run which makes him threatening. Now that I beat Jabba the Hutt's cousin, I got to enter the Spire and the concept behind it is cool. It reminds me of the Tower of Babel from Prince of Persia 2 Thrones, only instead of scaling the outside, you're ascending from the inside. That's about the only positive I have for this. The rest of the area isn't great, especially as there are sections which have pools of poison, including the arena for the final boss to the Earthen Peaks, Mytha. However, the way to drain the pool is really fucking stupid and makes no sense. There's a windmill you have to burn. This somehow stops the poison from flowing and drains it. I have no idea how that works, but whatever. I didn't know how to drain the poison. I actually had to look up a guide for it. The game does give you a clue, but only if you have summoned Devotee Scarlet, as she will point at the windmill. I'm all for not telling the player what to do and make them figure stuff out themselves, but this would have never been able to be figured out unless someone was looking at Scarlet when this was happening, or accidentally just saw the prompt at the windmill and was like, oh, I can burn this. It's also important to mention that the poison doesn't just hurt you, but it heals Mythos, so this fight is near impossible to do without burning the windmill. I just wanted to add, while doing some research and fact checking just to make sure that I've been saying the correct things, I've realised that Devotee Scarlet is actually only available in the Scholar of the First Sin edition instead of the original. So it was literally just a case of just either looking around and making sure that you know exactly what you're doing, or accidentally coming up to the prompt with the windmill. With Mythos defeated, you can ride an elevator to the top of the tower. What could possibly be there? This. Where the fuck did I go? When people first saw this in 2014, everyone made fun of the connecting areas. Iron Keep being above Earthen Peaks makes no sense, and trying to make sense of it will lead you to questioning reality. I didn't record the initial area of Iron Keep for some reason, so here's Smelter Demon. Moving on, I decided to go to a more grounded area and made my way to the Shaded Woods. This is one of the branching areas from Majula you could go, but the path is blocked because you need a branch of Yore. Shaded Woods is well designed with fog and lack of visibility. The enemies you fight there are invisible and hidden, so your lock-on doesn't even work. You can get backstabbed very easily too, so it forces you to be very focused and keep track of the outline of enemies until you make your way to the bonfire. then the gimmick is gone. The invisible enemies are still here, but they're easily seen as the invisibility they have doesn't blend in with the environment, so their advantage is gone. I did meet Man-Scorpion Tark, and agreed to help with fighting Scorpioness Najka. When you think about it, you agree to help a guy with committing domestic violence. So that's a thing. I bolted it through the area Najka is guarding because there's really nothing you're missing out on, and it's home to one of the most pointless boss fights, the Royal Rat Authority. It's a reskin of Sif as a wolf-rat hybrid with similar attacks, but none of the charm. So instead we go to Seldora. This place was actually a challenge for me, not because of difficulty, but because of the nightmare fuel that are the spiders and how they spawn. They drop from the ceilings, they're on the walls, they're literally in the crawl spaces, and will leap out from them to attack you, but only when it's dark. The torch will make them run away in fear, and they don't drop from the ceiling unless you hit one of them in the area or take away the torch. I never removed the torch while in this area. Fuck dealing with this. I even did the Prowling Mages fight with the torch. There aren't any spiders in this room, but I didn't want to take any chances. I'm pretty sure Prowling Mages is the precursor to the Deacons of the Deep fight in DS3. The last boss of Seldora is the Duke's Dear Freya, a giant spider so big she can suspend a dead dragon with her webs and has 2 heads. Literally no fear factor with her. But the smaller spiders in the arena? Nah, that torch is staying on. The spiders ignored me and my summons, however the path to get to Freya had really challenged me, this room in particular on the way to the boss room. Freya can only be damaged by hitting the heads. For some reason this is a spider that has an exoskeleton that's strong enough to withstand any kind of attack you do. Pretty sure it would actually be crushed under the weight of that exoskeleton, but what do I know, I'm not a biologist. This is where I decided to use a bonfire ascetic. This item allows you to turn the section of the zone the bonfire is tied to into a New Game Plus version, and it can be repeated a lot. I did use it, but I used it on the wrong bonfire. I didn't realize the one tied to Freya was a different bonfire or that it even existed. When I first came to Seldora, I went through it quickly, so I didn't have to deal with the spiders because fuck that shit. However, this playthrough I need to fight Freya again, as her boss soul changes in New Game Plus, and it's needed to get the Moonlight Greatsword. So I explored Seldora and its spider-infested sections to find the bonfire, which was a very uncomfortable experience. I know the Greatsword isn't the best in DS2, but it's my reward for dealing with this. There's a positive to DS2, it can help with arachnophobia. Would I go through Seldora again? Fuck no. I went back to Iron Keep as there's another of the Lord bosses to beat, the Old Iron King. Before I show him, I want to talk about Iron Keep. This place is notorious because enemies here have their detection stats so high they'd be able to see through Snake's box disguise. Just look at this guy, he literally sprints for me even though he's technically further away than the other ones who didn't even spot me. It doesn't make sense. There's no consistency with their detection range, and the ones from this section before Smelter Demon are even worse as there's a good 100 meters between the archway and the end of the area, but you have one of these katana-wielding weebs rushing you like you're a Genshin cosplayer. It's a fun place to explore as it makes really good use of verticality and the environment. There are large jars you can roll through to make yourself wet, dripping even, which will allow you to run on the burning tiles and take reduced damage so you can actually get the loot that's drawing you like the shiny object-loving simpleton you are, myself included. I see shiny, and all I think is gimme gimme gimme. The Terza guys also interact with the environment in a neat way too. Slamming the weapons on the bridge will eventually break a segment of the bridge. This was the first time I saw this, and I legit went, ooh, neat. It's just a shame all this is ruined by the boss. I have no idea why he looks like a Balrog, he just does. But the fight against him is really annoying. You get this tiny platform with an oddly placed hole, Golmog over here can push you into it, swipe his arms and throw you off the platform, even his fire breath can push you off, and because it's lava, you're dead. Honestly, I can't understand why he was designed like this. And what's even worse is, when you figure out how to dodge his attacks, it turns into poking his arms until he dies. They really did Durin's Bane dirty with this. Speaking of being done dirty, don't question the transition, it's time to go to the gutter, or Blighttown 2.0, because we need a Blighttown. This time it's with the need for the torch. I like the design of No Man's Wolf because even without the torch, you can still see and traverse the place. The gutter is a big no. You cannot see anything without the torch. So forget it being Blighttown, it's actually Tomb of the Giants. I swear to God, it's just PTSD for me. I didn't explore everything like I did in my initial playthrough. I made a beeline for where I needed to go, because honestly, who wants to be in a place where you can't see most of it, and then when you finally do, you wish you didn't? So here we are. Black Gulch. It isn't bad. I'm not going to hate on it. Is what I would say if it wasn't the entire area being covered in these fucking statues that spit poison bolts at you. Now, here's the thing. I'm not wearing much in terms of armor. I'm literally wearing a black robe, so I'm aware my poise and damage mitigation is fairly low. What I am concerned about is the fact that the poison bolts shot at me are able to stagger me instantly. Just how fast are they traveling to keep me in place? Or is my character a drama queen and wants to cause a scene? The rest of the area isn't actually an issue. You have these giant worms, which I'm not sure how they could possibly be a threat or even push you off the ledge. They show themselves before you even get in front of them. There are these pools of oil which you can light on fire, and you should, as they have this weird handworm thing that will grab you, or you could just sprint past them and they're no longer a threat. Just a quick rant, along with my other ones. Was this area actually playtested? I'm genuinely curious, as there's no way the devs thought to themselves, yes, the statues covering the whole area is perfect and intended. And don't get me started on the handworm things. Dark suckers. That's what they're called. Okay? But for them to not be a threat by just running away is poor design. They can slither and give chase, yes, but they are designed more to be ambush enemies, only they're pretty slow on the ambush. The real threat is this invader. You get invaded by NPCs a lot in DS2 and I have no idea why. Yes, you had invasions in DS1 as well, but the difference between the two games is in DS1, the number of invasions was low and the health pools were within 3 or 4 hits from you before the invader dies. In DS2, they decided to increase invasions by 1000% and their health pool is enough to give a boss a run for its money. I know this one in Black Gulch can be cheesed, after I'd already gone through the area. At least I was able to meet Bay and progress a questline. Plus, I summoned her for the Rotten boss fight. I do not like this fight, and I can't find much that's good about him. The only interesting thing I can talk about is on his left arm, there is a small guy who motions attacks and Rotten will copy those attacks. No one's talked about this, but this is very similar to how the copy of Pontus Sullivan works in DS3. So thank you, Rotten. Without you, we wouldn't have had one of the best fights in DS3. Now that all 4 primal bonfires are lit, you get Aldia showing himself, questioning you and the quest you're on, hinting at a different way of dealing with the undead curse and end of the world. I did some off-screen farming for gear. I wanted more defense because now we're going to Drowned Lake Castle. This place is big, like Anor Londo kind of big. I feel a lot of care went into the design and layout of this place. Just look at how you open the door. You don't interact it in the usual way. Instead, you have to kill a couple enemies and let their souls be drained by these golems. Then once you're inside the castle, you make your way to the basement area and have doors which do the same. I didn't realize some had a sentinel behind those doors, so I had the shit scared out of me when I got hit by one of them out of nowhere. I decided to skip opening all the doors. I didn't want to waste my time killing a boss that's reused as a regular enemy. Instead, I wanted to fight Dragon Rider again. Only not just Dragon Rider, 2 Dragon Riders. Yeah, I haven't got much to say. They're just in the way and more annoying to fight as there's 2 of them. The rest of Drowned Lake Castle is making your way through the upper section, unlocking the lift, getting beaten up by this horse, creeped out with the animations from the mimics, get annoyed with the lock-on taking forever to register the gargoyle becoming active. Then you can finally open the door which gets you to the next boss. But before that you have to fight a bunch of horse guy statues that come to life who I'm pretty sure have infinite poise. Anyway, Looking Glass Knight, a boss the community love. I can see why. His melee attacks have a long range, he doesn't give you too much room to breathe, and the moveset is somewhat varied. The shield also acts as a good way to counter magic users because it deflects the spells, and the cherry on top is the shield is used to summon adds to the fight alongside him. If I didn't use a summon, this fight would have been a challenge, but with the summon, the fight is completely trivialized. Plus, magic is busted in DS2, so the add dies very quickly. I feel a lot of fights can be made easier in DS2 with just a summon, and it's all because of aggro. If you just let the summon fight the boss and only occasionally hit the boss, you're basically safe. I've made my way to the supposed worst area of the game, Shrine of Amana. I'll be honest, both times I've been here weren't so bad. What makes this place annoying to deal with is if you rush through the area, there are enemies waiting in the water to ambush you. While someone is singing, they glow and are very easy to spot. They're a little harder to see when the singing stops. The thing I don't like about Shrine of Amana are the caster NPCs who can spot you from a mile away. They tend to have someone else nearby that will help them, or more accurately, the casters will act as the distraction. This is how most people tend to die in there, and complain about the fact that it's the worst zone in the game. They see the casters, and because focus is on them, you get ambushed or roll into the deep end and die. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, it's smart enemy placement and use of environment. What's actually annoying is the fact that their spells have the best tracking in the game, and the range is insane. The real issue with Shrine is the final boss. There's no reason for it to exist, or at least in the state it's in. Demon of Song, Seaman of Dong, Frog Skin, whatever you want to call it, is a massive waste of time. No difficulty, very easy to deal with mechanics, and takes longer than it should because of the foreskin it hides behind. If I was given a list of bosses I could remove from DS2, this would be top of the list, followed by both Royal Rat fights. After beating Demon of Song and making my way to another lift, I made it to the Undead Crypt, another area of the game which is dark, although you can still somewhat see where you're going. The crypt is the shortest of the 3 though. In fact, I realized after my second playthrough that the only thing that makes this place feel longer than it actually is are the rooms which have the statues you have to destroy. You don't even have to destroy them. If you can just quickly kill the weak undead in the area and make sure they don't hit the bells, the wraiths won't spawn from the statues. Because believe me, they will fuck you up if they do spawn. I found out the hard way when I got to the area just before Velstart's room. I can't emphasize how pissed off I was to die to a wraith that was off screen, This Dragon Rider literally survived with a pixel of health. I don't usually say any of the Souls games are unfair, but this? What the fuck? You go through the entirety of the crypt seeing you can destroy the statues the race spawned from, only to get to this room where they're constantly spawning and no way of stopping them. At least the fight against Velstad isn't bullshit and unfair. First off, I like his design and the lore behind him is top tier. He's really balanced as well, like his damage is actually what you'd expect it to be with the guy who's wielding a giant mace. Dude literally killed me the first time. Your boy over here got greedy and thought that he couldn't get flattened. Yeah, I got flattened. Velstad suffers from dude in armor syndrome. You can beat him by just dodging every single one of his attacks. They're extremely telegraphed, and magic also does a lot of damage against him. Still one of the better fights in DS2, and the fact that it's a boss that comes after Demon of Song makes it even better. His death animation is also unique and interesting because he's the only boss that kneels, and it speaks a lot to his character as well, especially with what he's guarding and what you see after Velstad. I just wish that he actually had a higher health pool so that way I could fight him for longer, and his phase 2 was a lot better as well, because the phase 2 is just him powered up, but again it can just be dealt with by you dodging because it's easy. Vendrick is met right after beating Velstad. You can technically fight him if you want, but without getting any giant souls your damage will be pathetic. Broken Sword against Asylum Demon pathetic. It can be done, but Vendrick does a fuck ton of damage as well, and has an insane amount of health, even when you are able to do more damage against him. Instead, you can get a ring from the pile of clothes he left on the floor. A bit weird to be rummaging through it while he's there, but I guess it's fine, as he's a hollow now. You can clearly see they were trying to do a, hey, it's like Gwyn reference here. The ring is the whole reason we made our way here, as it's the only thing that will open these special doors. A quick side note, the ring has to be equipped to open the door, but after that the door remains open permanently. Why can't it just open with the ring being in your inventory? It's not game breaking, but just seems a bit odd to me that you have to wear it and then take it off again, and then the doors still basically function as doors. We meet up with Lucatiel one last time. Doing the questline will get you her armor set and weapon, but also make you feel like shit. Regardless of you doing the questline the correct way or not, Lucatiel will go hollow. The difference is if you have to fight her or not. And I don't want to fight her because it's almost as painful as having to fight Solaire, and I can't go through that. I wouldn't recover from it, and definitely not from this where she tells you her name and asks you to remember it, as she might not. This ending to her story also leads you to fighting her brother, who already went hollow and is the basis of her journey. I've not talked about many of the NPCs in DS2 as their stories aren't as engaging or emotional as Lucatiel, at least for me. Now we go to Aldia's Keep. There's quite a bit to explore and do here, or you could just skip 90% of it and make your way to the next area. I decided to explore. I didn't know much about Aldia, but the items you pick up from here and the environmental storytelling gives you a really good idea about what sort of person he is. I mean, Aldia is referred to as the Scholar of the First Sin, so you can take a guess and say he's a researcher at the very least. I think one of the most interesting things to find out about Aldia is his research on invisibility. In the Dark Souls universe, invisibility is achieved by spells like Hidden Body or something similar, but this doesn't provide full invisibility, more like 90%, and it is demonstrated in-game with the hidden enemies in the Shaded Woods. Apparently becoming 100% invisible leads to you being completely forgotten. Your very existence is known only to you. You can't stop being invisible either. DS2 has some NPCs just chilling next to something or sitting down that are completely invisible, and you don't even notice them until you accidentally kill them by randomly swinging in their direction, and loot appears, literally out of thin air. It seems these NPCs are the victims of Aldia's experiment for true invisibility. Aldia also has a bunch of creatures in cages for research. Pretty sure if Titanite demons existed in DS2, this place would have a few, and I feel this is what makes him one of the most interesting characters in Dark Souls as a whole. I didn't see anything similar to this in DS1, and DS3 has a couple scholar-like characters, but none of them to the extent of Aldia. Speaking of caged creatures, at the end of the keep there's a guardian dragon in a giant bird cage. Well, if you want to be technical about it, it's actually a wyvern. This is one of the few dragon fights in DS2, and I feel like this is where I need to defend dragon fights. Guardian Dragon flies around the cage and keeps to the air as much as it can, which makes sense. It's a dragon and has wings, why not use them? It can hover in the air to breathe fire, grab onto the bars of the cage and do the exact same, only occasionally land, usually to regain stamina and then repeat the process. I've seen people criticize this fight because it doesn't want to stay grounded, and this is the same criticism for Sin the Slumbering Dragon in the Sunken King DLC. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Sin very quickly. I like the fight against him, and even though he kept going into the air and leaving my melee character useless for a lot of the fight, I still liked him. He acted like an actual dragon would, and I feel is better than Calamite. Sin hovers in the air to breathe poison fire on you. Apparently regular fire isn't enough. Does a passing breath attack while in the air and has a dive bomb attack with a broken hitbox. But at least he's got a variety of attacks. He also has a passive effect where your weapon durability decreases twice as quick thanks to his corrosive scales. He actually forced me to use repair powders during his encounter. I didn't use repair powders much for both playthroughs, so at least he's making me use an item that I'd otherwise have just forgot existed. The dragon fights aren't bad, they're just not dudes in armor people are used to fighting or other enemies which don't fly in DS1. Seriously, we had drakes in DS1 but they didn't fly, and while we're on the subject of dragons, the area guarded by the dragon is the Dragon Eyrie, an entire area full of dragons, but only 3 you can actually fight and they're all copies of the Guardian Dragon just without the flying part. This is what a dragon fight is like when they don't fly. Very difficult as you can see. Can't see why dragon fights aren't like this all the time. In the Scholar of the First Sin version of the game, you can make a beeline to the end of the Dragon Eyrie if you want, or you could explore the zone, fight the 3 copy-paste dragons, kill crystal lizards for material, and deal with these guys who just break gear because it's a fun mechanic. There's not much that's noteworthy of this place, but a cool bit of design. The area is littered with eggs, and when it comes to crossing the bridge, the dragons will show up, and depending on how many eggs you destroyed will make you have an invisible timer. This invisible timer is for you to reach the end, otherwise you will fall to your death and instantly die. That is only if you didn't kill the dragons, but destroyed eggs instead. It's nothing to write home about, but I thought it was a nice bit of design that punishes you for being a dick. I'm curious to know how many times these dragons have punished players. Getting past the bridge, you get to the Dragon Shrine, home to my people, the Dragon Bros. Guys who like dragons so much they wear armor resembling dragons, and they also don't gang up on you. These are the only hostile NPCs that aren't hostile. Dragon Shrine doesn't have much to offer in terms of exploration. A bit of exploration will get you to the room where the petrified egg is so you can join their covenant. A covenant focused entirely on PvP and being honourable, something I've never seen the Souls community be. I know I said I love the Souls community, but the people who actively go out of their way to invade and ruin someone's fun can go fuck themselves. And you better believe I pulled my Ethernet cable out from my PC quicker than, well, you fill in the blanks, just so I wouldn't have to deal with people trying to ruin my fun. After beating the only 2 hostile scalies here and nearly shitting myself with the damage dual greatswords can do to me, you can talk to the dragon these guys are worshipping. Ancient Dragon gives the last key item you need to reach the end of the game, the Ashen Mist Heart. This lets you visit the giant memories. I don't think it's actually needed to reach the end, but I wanted to get the alternative ending so I went through the trouble to get it. Go through the giant memories and witnessed history, beat the giant lord, who is the last giant. This explains why he was so pissed off after seeing me. You have to be really pissed off at someone to not only just break out from your chains, but also rip off your arm and use it as a makeshift club. Now we make our way to the final location, the Throne of Want. I was very disappointed with this. You start off with the Twin Fight, Throne Defender and Watcher. They were a lot easier with summons, but even without summons, they don't pose much of a challenge. Easy to read attacks, and when you're fighting them solo, they're more annoying than difficult. Right after beating them, Nashandra shows herself. This is Vendrick's wife. Turns out she is a fragment of Manus' soul from DS1, and is the reason Vendrick started a war against the giants. Nashandra's gimmick is that she curses you. Seriously, that's all it is to her fight. She summons these clouds which curse you if you get too close. Fighting her solo, you can just make her get closer to you, so those things don't really do anything. But even then, it's not an issue as the curse status works differently in DS2 compared to DS1. Then once she's dead, Aldia decides to show himself. He's a stationary target but has somewhat high magic defense and has a fire aura around him, so most of the time I'm not even able to attack him in melee. He's not difficult, he just takes a while to kill because of that. Technically you can do these 3 fights at separate times from each other, but it's weird to get the King's Ring, beat the Throne Duo, then get the Ashen Mist Heart from the Ancient Dragon, kill the Giant Lord to get the Giant's Kinship, go back to the Throne of Want, fight Nashandra, and then you've beat the game. Only doing it this way you lock yourself out of Aldia, as you need to kill Vendrick. It's a lot simpler just to fight each boss one after the other. Finally, it's time to talk about the DLC. I did finish all 3 of them, I just didn't record them and didn't want to go through them again on a different character. Crown of the Sunken King, Old Iron King, and Ivory King DLC, they're all good, but not for the same reasons. Sunken King's DLC has good level design and exploration with the platforms that can be raised and lowered, opening other locations, and of course has the best dragon fight. Old Iron King DLC has you going up and down a massive tower where you fight the best dude in armor, and that being Fume Knight. I should have recorded it, but Fume Knight is the best fight and you can skip his first phase if you wear Valstad's headpiece because there's drama between them. It's unknown if the reason he goes into phase 2 straight away is because you killed Velstad or wearing his helmet reminds Fume Knight of him. Either way, he's fuming when he sees it.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
Then there's the Ivory King DLC. This one forces you to explore to find the knights needed to make the Ivory King fight more manageable. This is the only DLC that has the DS1 feeling of the map looping back, which is always a plus. And the Ivory King fight is top tier. Not as good as Fume Knight in my opinion, but very close to it. I just don't like that it forces exploration instead of encouraging it, and no, having an easier time on a boss fight isn't encouragement. So my thoughts on Dark Souls 2. It's not as bad as everyone says it is, or at least used to say it was. I've seen a lot of people making videos where they've revisited DS2 and changed their opinion on it, at least some. Most still complain about things which aren't true or they don't understand completely. There are definitely problems the game has, but they're more personal issues for me. Like, why does it have so many invasions? Why do connecting paths from one area to another make zero sense? Why is there so much padding and a lot of pointless boss fights? None of these are game breaking and don't really affect the gameplay. Would I recommend people play it? Yeah, but I don't think it's worth the New Game Plus cycle, even though DS2 is the only one of the trilogy where they actually put in efforts for New Game Plus. New enemies showing up, the Lord bosses dropping different souls, encounters being slightly different. I definitely advise to use the bonfire aesthetic to the New Game Plus section, but not worth going through the entire New Game Plus cycle. I played the Scholar of the First Sin version of the game, so I could be wrong with my opinion, but I feel the changes made to this versus the original are to do with the balancing of the areas and mob density. The core is still the same, with minor changes like torches scaring off the spiders in Seldora. That didn't work in the original version. Which version you play is entirely up to you, but I enjoyed playing Dark Souls 2 more than I thought I was going to. I'm probably going to anger a few people by saying this, but Dark Souls 3 feels like it's a game made by fans of DS1. I don't mean it's sloppy, in fact it's the one with the best gameplay out of the three, but it references a lot from DS1 and I have a feeling this is a result of people's reaction and hate towards DS2 at the time, so the further the game is from DS2 in setting, the better. Even though there are small references to DS2 and some design changes from it that actually carried over, like having 4 ring slots and only being able to level up by speaking to the Firekeeper. I understand why the setting for Dark Souls 3 references DS1 so much. It's the same world and the linking of the flame has happened enough, we're at the literal end of the world and as a result, places have meshed together, which will become very apparent later. DS3 has an undertone to do with letting go, or more accurately, not letting go. The linking of the flame has repeated so much that the world is literally crashing in on itself and being consumed by it. It's very fitting. DS1 was about not giving up, DS2 was about finding a different way to overcome the undead curse, and DS3 is about letting go and moving on. So let's start from the beginning. You are the Ashen One, or Unkindled, which is pretty much the same as a Tarnished in Elden Ring. You're not a chosen undead or a hero, you're a last resort. The intro cinematic even shows you 4 Lords of Cinder that have risen from their graves, answering the bells of awakening. Only these 4 decided they don't want to carry out their duty, so it's your job to kill them and rekindle the flame. Going through the tutorial area isn't anything special, but the first boss you encounter gives the impression you'll be fighting dudes in armor. You'd only think the enemy type is like that if you didn't do a bit of exploring and found the giant crystal lizards that will pummel you into oblivion.
I have seen the gates of oblivion.
Eudex Gundyr is the first boss you encounter, and same as the Asylum Demon, pretty easy to deal with, at least until he goes into phase 2 and you see the eldritch horror that comes out of him. This is a trend for DS3, some bosses have a phase 2 or an enrage to make the fight harder and it feels overused at times. I know DS1 had this as well, and even other games from different developers use this. I used to play WoW a lot, I fought bosses which had 3 or 4 phases at times, but I think my issue with it being so prevalent in Dark Souls 3 is that it doesn't add to the fight, it prolongs it and is used as a cheap way of saying, get good, this is Dark Souls. It's a similar issue I have with Elden Ring, however I will admit there are some bosses which benefit from a phase 2 and one of them is agreed by the whole Souls community to be the best fight in DS3. It's just not every boss needs a phase 2, it's okay to have a filler, just not to the extent of DS2. It's time to say hello to Firelink Shrine, although it looks different to its DS1 counterpart, but it's definitely Firelink. And it's here where I realise DS3 has sacrificed a design decision that DS1 made so popular and a lot of Souls-likes have copied. The game isn't as interconnected as it used to be. There aren't any areas which connect back to Firelink, instead you have to teleport from Firelink to get to Lothric and start the linear paths to the rest of the game. I know DS2 had a similar design where you go from the hub area to a zone, however you could choose which order to do this in. DS3 is literally telling you, this is the place you have to go to and will continue guiding you towards it. I think there are only 2 or 3 areas in the game where you can do them in a slightly different order, but that's about it. Where Dark Souls 3 excels compared to the others is the combat. It's tight, like really fucking tight. The hitboxes are fixed and more refined. You can use a special attack which brings your character below someone's swing and the swing actually misses, and your character's movements are more fluid and natural in comparison to Dark Souls 2. The first real boss you fight is Vort. Most people know him through his boss music as it's used in memes, and it's perfect for that, but the fight is also a better indication of what other boss fights are going to be like. Unlike Dark Souls 2, the fights are long not because of stupidly high health pools, but with how aggressive the bosses are. They literally force you to be more defensive, as an easy boss like Vort can still beat you into a pulp. I know this because I didn't respect him and was punished for it. After beating Vort, I use the banner and get picked up by these guys. The same guys who took me to Analondo in DS1. Honestly, I can't not see how much they wanted to remind people about DS1. It wouldn't bother me so much if it wasn't so obvious DS3 is doing damage control with the backlash from Dark Souls 2. But anyway, we're back to seeing more of these fucking dogs. There doesn't seem to be much of a reason for these dogs being released, having them kill the undead which are slower than molasses. It's just a cheap way to show, hey, danger! And I realized this because you can see a couple dogs which were just hiding behind this carriage. They weren't from the pack that was released by the portcullis and didn't go after the undead nearby either. I think it's important to talk about a design issue most sequels fall into. They become formulaic, and I feel this is a problem that Dark Souls 3 has as well. There are very clear areas where an ambush is expected, so it doesn't succeed in surprising you, or oddly enough, NPCs show themselves early, making their placement pointless for an ambush. The dog's placement behind the carriage is very lazy of FromSoft. All I had to do was move my camera to spot them before they even reacted to me being there. I know it's an early section of the game, but DS2 had an ambush in the forest right after you leave the cave, and it got me. It's just lazy, as I've seen FromSoft do better ambushes that still catch me off guard at times in other titles, and this is while I'm replaying them. I haven't really got much to say about the undead settlement. There's nothing special about it, kind of the same old with branching paths that would lead to the same location. Don't get me wrong, it's more than what the undead Burg offered. The Burg gave the illusion of branching paths, and that is extremely generous. Undead Settlement is better in my opinion, especially with what it loops back with, as there actually is a boss here and you can go to it straight away. Or you could explore and realize just how big this place is. I said there was a boss. The Ballsack. I mean seriously, they must have known what this would make people think when seeing it. It's a boss you fight by destroying the sacks to deal real damage against it. There is a phase 2 where it falls into the arena where you meet the Moundmaker Covenant guy. Most people miss out on joining the Moundmakers because they thought the curse was a Greatwood first. This boss actually permanently kills him. Not the best way to go. Imagine you're minding your own business and then a giant tree with huge sacks lands on you. After beating on this guy's sacks enough and he dies, you get the Transposing Kiln. This is what allows you to trade boss souls into weapons and spells. Kind of annoying that some of the best weapons in the game are locked behind an optional boss. Yeah, you don't actually need to kill the Greatwood to progress, you only need it for the kiln. I'm not forgetting that DS1 had a plus 10 requirement for a weapon type, and DS2 had 2 NPCs, one of them being petrified, so you need a special item, and the other one being hidden, where once they're freed you have to go to the spider-infested zone. It's no wonder in Elden Ring they had the NPC who sells the boss items at Round Table Hold. Honestly, people who started with Elden Ring have it so easy now. At this point, I didn't know where to go. I'd already unlocked the bonfire to the Road of Sacrifice before going to the Greatwood. I had 2 options. Either I beat another optional boss or go straight to one of my favorites. So I made my way to Farron Keep. First off, fuck this place and the need to include a poison area, this time with sludge, so your movement is slowed down to a crawl and you're doing fat rolls. Secondly, it's a little odd that above where the Covenant Wolf is, there's just a random stray demon. He wasn't difficult, at least he shouldn't have been, seems he got a few new attacks compared to his DS1 counterpart, although Stray Demon has seen better days, but he nearly killed me, so good for him. Back to Farron Keep and the poison sludge. Thankfully this is the only place that's like this, almost like as if the devs knew people wouldn't enjoy it but still included it for some reason. There's nothing special about this place, and I could continue drawing from DS1 references, but I'd rather talk about Dark Souls 3. You have to interact with 3 candles to open the door, which will take you to the next area. The next boss is one of the better ones, and probably one of my top 3. Getting to them isn't difficult, and I feel that's a bit of a trend for Dark Souls 3 as well with its locations. Most of the connections between locations feels as though it's just there in order to stop the game from feeling like a boss rush. Then you've also got the issue of being invaded at inopportune times. I played the game offline, mostly just to avoid invasions. But that doesn't stop NPC invasions, they're always scripted and they're always in a certain area. The one at Farron Keep really annoyed me and I knew I was going to die, so I literally ran all the way to a bonfire just because I knew I was going to die, and collecting my souls would be less of a ball ache if I did that. The problem with invasions in Dark Souls 3 is they're just like invasions in Dark Souls 2. The health pools are too high in my opinion, and it's just disappointing to see that the devs have sacrificed so much when it came to what made the original great, just so they can focus more on combat and getting you to the next boss fight. So let's talk about the combat. The best part of Farron Keep is the fight against the Abyss Watchers. I love everything about this. The hyper-aggression, the chaos that Phase 1 is with multiple Watchers active, especially when they're not fighting each other and instead are focused on you. Phase 2 is also really cool, not only because of the cutscene that plays showing the transition, but also the fact the single Watcher is even more aggressive, does more damage, and his attacks have been empowered with fire, and this acts as an extra hitbox to deal with, which is also a roll catch. Now that I think about it, I think the Abyss Watcher is the first boss that has this. If there was anything we needed from DS2, it would have to be the bonfire aesthetics, so you can keep fighting the fun bosses as much as you want. Dark Souls 3 excels with its combat and the boss fights. I think maybe 2, 3 at most which feel bad and shouldn't be there, but other than that, the game does a really good job about giving you difficulty through fights. I died a lot against the Abyss Watchers, so much that I felt I needed more stats, so I put them on hold and went for the Crystal Sage instead. I remember my first time fighting this guy and hating it. I couldn't remember why, at least until I did my first attempt. I know I got greedy, but come on, I was only 1 hit away from beating him and was getting stun locked to death. It left me feeling very bitter. I did beat him on my second attempt, and now with more confidence than you should have after beating the Sage, I went for the Abyss Watchers, finally beating them and getting my first Lord Soul. With them dead, I had a couple options on where to go. I went for the easier path and made my way to the Cathedral of the Deep. I completely forgot how big this place was. You have an outdoor area which isn't too big but offers a nice amount of exploration. Even met a giant crystal lizard. This time I cheesed him and let the mist kill it. Genuinely surprised with how effective the mist was. My guy melted. I decided to put the cathedral on hold and made my way to Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Something to keep in mind, I was clearly underleveled and my gear is nowhere near good enough to deal good damage against her. However, she's in the way, so the only thing I could do is cheese the fight. I wouldn't recommend cheesing this. I still remember fighting her legitimately and definitely one of the better fights in the game. I know I said the Abyss Watchers were aggressive. Dancer is more aggressive and because of her size, she's got better reach. Something I realized painfully during one of my deaths. Part of me regrets fighting her this way, but at the same time, I really wanted to make my way to the Consumed King's Garden. This is an optional area, it's not needed to progress the story and can be missed if you didn't take a left after beating Dancer. I got there a lot sooner than I should have as everything hits like a fucking truck. So I did the only thing I could do, cast Hidden Body and hope for the best. I did all this so I could get to Osiris. They called him the Consumed King because he was so obsessed with dragons that he became one. A little Seath looking, but he did it. I cheesed him too. For some reason the second phase was a lot easier than the first when it came to the cheese strat. I think it's because the boss has his aggression set to 11, he doesn't think to move around those tree roots to get to me. I died so many times during his first phase, I started thinking he was patched nearly a decade after release. I was very paranoid. Turns out I just suck and couldn't position him correctly until phase 2. Osiris is another boss that should be fought properly. He's such a fun fight, and looking back at it, I could probably do the fight the normal way even with my stats and gear. But anyway, his boss soul is how you get the Moonlight Greatsword. That's right, I ruined 2 boss fights to get a sword that's not even the best in the game. Cathedral isn't the correct word I'd use, I'd say palace is more fitting. It's such a big area, it has not one, but 2 shortcuts looping back to the bonfire in the chapel. I was disappointed with what the Cathedral of the Deeps had to offer though. Literally watching the footage, I'm trying to figure out what is noteworthy of this place. It's big. There you go, that's what you get. It's definitely a quantity over quality sort of situation with Cathedral, and it's even more noticeable with the boss. Deacons of the Deep is just a slightly harder version of Congregation from DS2. It's a better fight, phase 1 being find the guy who's got the red glow until phase 2 and kill the Deacon before you get cursed and die, or have the fat guys body slam you. I wasn't expecting that, but at least they're creative. Deacons is definitely one of those bosses which feel like they're filler. Turns out they're mandatory. I checked the boss list while writing this and it's surprising to see they aren't optional even though they feel like they should be. I know Congregation in DS2 is also mandatory, but the difference between the two is Congregation is on the way to Seldora proper, Deacons is the end boss of the area. In fact, the only boss here. And yes, I did explore further and went to see Rosaria and her mangrubs who still creep the fuck out of me. I think if there's anything to enjoy about Cathedral of the Deeps, it's the lore. Just actually playing through it isn't interesting. Time to see the better section of the game. But first, Catacombs of Carthus. That's it. It's a giant catacomb full of skeletons. If you're expecting anything else, then I don't know what to tell you. Skeletons, catacombs, kind of mixed together. I actually like this place. By all rights I should be saying it's boring because it only has one enemy type and the generic design of catacombs. But you know what makes this one of the better areas to be in? These guys. I'm not even joking, this made me lose it and it's not the first time you encounter the skeleton boulder, but the fact they roll in off screen is what makes it hilarious to me. You also don't see it too much either, so it doesn't feel overused, otherwise the charm is gone. DS3 actually started to be more enjoyable for me once I got past Carthus. But it's not because this place is bad or anything, it's just this is where things start to pick up with area design, boss encounters, enemy variety, and just the general feel of fun. I know there are people who like DS3 from the very beginning. Even though Carthus is 90% skeletons, it's still a fun area to explore, and if you're feeling creative, you can use the boulder to one-shot these rats or other skeletons. I had a couple options with where I wanted to go. I could either go to the boss or explore further. I saw this demon and just noped the fuck out. So I made my way to Warner instead, the second Lord of Cinder you'll fight. I died the first time. I saw him breathing his mist and was too late with running away. Warner is a gimmick fight. Yes, he takes damage from hits, but with such a huge health pool, you'll run out of room and die to his mist coming out of his body. But you can reset his position by destroying the gold bracelets, which also deal a third of his health when destroyed, so obviously destroying all 3 of them will kill him. You don't have to do anything special to expose them or make him vulnerable, instead it's just a case of hitting him quick enough before he moves his arm away. I don't like Warner, and for a Lord of Cinder, he's disappointing. When watching through the footage, I died to him a couple times, the first being the Mist Breath, and the second was bad RNG with his attacks. I thought my kill was actually going to be another death, but thankfully it wasn't. I really didn't want to have to fight him again. The run back to him is harder, and you can run to his boss room without having to fight a single enemy. Alright, let's go to that demon I pushed out on. Yeah, he would have been hard, but I remembered using sorceries makes things a lot easier. I think the reason why my memory of Dark Souls 3 being harder could be my first time playing was actually a strength dex build. Who'd have thought fighting from a distance would be easier than up close? This demon guards the way to the Smoldering Lake. I was holding on to 42,000 souls. I knew it was coming up and decided to go back to Firelink to spend them. There's nothing more painful than losing all those souls, not to a hollow you mistimed the parry on, or the ballista you don't dodge properly. These fucking crabs.
Giant enemy crab.
And why does FromSoft keep adding them in later titles? I said a while ago that DS3 has areas from DS1 which mesh together, and Smoldering Lake is one of them. It's Ash Lake mixed in with the Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith. The old Demon King boss fight is surprisingly good. He shares the same model as 2 other demons who are relatively easy. This guy has a whole bunch of movesets and actually poses a threat. If you fight him in melee, I wanted to feel better after dying to a giant crab, so nothing but spells on the guy. Old Demon King also shows just how weak the demons have become. In Dark Souls 1, they were a force to be reckoned with. Now, they're just there, not posing much of a threat. Exploring the Demon Ruins was somewhat difficult. The enemies here did more damage than I was expecting, and some jumped me. The fact the ruins look the same with most rooms meant that I got lost, but that's good. It encourages exploration as you're always thinking, was I here? Coming across a Black Knight was a surprise though. Just like in DS1, they hit really hard, but unlike in DS1, I had zero confidence parrying them. This is a trend, keep that in mind. Their attacks have different timings to what I was used to, and with how rare it is to actually encounter a Black Knight, you don't really get the chance to practice against them. Mixed with the fact that Demon Ruins are so big it can run out of Estus Flask, this can very quickly lead to a bad time. I decided to play it safe by dodging or fighting from a distance, especially with the fact Sora can be found here, and I'd rather not deal with the guy who's holding Fume Knight's sword in a fair fight. Magic really brings out the worst in me. Why get better at the game when you can just cheese? At least I'm not doing PvP in Elden Ring with the bleed build. I didn't explore everything in the ruins. I was missing the ring to reduce fire damage, but made my way to the second Black Knight of the area. For some reason the ruins have 2 of them instead of the usual 1. Even DS1 had Black Knights that were spread apart, and we only ever had 1, so 2 of them in the same area is a bit weird. Although what's stranger is the fact that Black Knight does less damage than Sorig. Anyway, I decided to make my way to the ballista and shut it off. There was no need to do this. I wasn't going to explore more of Smoldering Lake. I just wanted to tick it off my list, and would you believe it? These guys are here. Only they actually pose a threat. I told a friend of mine the ones in Dark Souls 1 are extremely easy to deal with and bait into a wall. The travel distance is really far too. In DS3, you can still bait them, but as soon as they realize you've dodged or hit a wall, they instantly stop and roll to you again. This should have been where I realized old enemies from Dark Souls 1 have changed, so using taxes from DS1 in DS3 could lead to my death. Okay, time to talk about one of the most beautiful areas in the entirety of the Souls series. That's right, I've never heard anyone having a negative take on Irilith, and I can't think of anything myself. I mean, you can see Anor Londo from the background from where the bonfire is, although you don't see much that's a reference to Anor Londo when exploring Irilith, so I can't even complain about the game relying on DS1 to keep your attention. The enemies are completely different, and they're difficult for me to deal with once they're in a combo chain. Parrying one of them was 100% luck there. I couldn't learn the attack patterns, and I was distracted with how cool their attack animations looked as well. Irilith is a really beautiful area. It does give a bit of a Bloodborne feel to the architecture, which makes sense. Dark Souls 3 did come out after Bloodborne, and seems to have drawn inspiration from it. I didn't think, oh look, it's Yharnam! It didn't even cross my mind when I first played DS3, but it made me think of Yharnam this time, although it wasn't the first thing that came to mind. It probably should have been. The monstrous dog you fight on the bridge in order to get into Irilith literally looks like it came from Bloodborne. I think it's one of the few areas in the game where enemy variety is very prevalent. You have these knights that can do an absurd amount of damage, the shades which can only be seen from a distance by their glowing eyes, more dogs. Yes, there's enough of them here which forces me to say they add to the variety. These really creepy multi-limbed women who remind me of the girl from The Ring. They creeped me out when I first saw them. I didn't want to be anywhere near them to the point I was swinging my sword at the ones that are literally scenery, just so that I wouldn't get jumped. I was fully aware the ones where their backs are showing above the waterline are the real ones, but this is what fear makes you do. At least they're a better ambush enemy compared to the Darksuckers. Silver Knights also show up, which makes sense. Anor Londo is looming in the background. They don't show up in high frequency until after you beat the boss though, but you will see a few in this manner. I could make a joke about the one that's staring at the painting of Guinevere, but I think the more humorous thing is the fact that I was able to dodge the majority of the archer's shots, but the one which got me ended up impaling my right cheek so hard it came out the other end. I did get to return the favour by backstabbing him, which he didn't die from. See that? This is why you always turn around to face the guy you thought you killed. There's always a chance they're not dead and are ready to teach you this very valuable lesson. After surviving this ordeal and being reminded of my place, I run into more dogs. I really hate dealing with them. But this one that jumped into my swing is a very satisfying thing to see. I don't care if it wasn't planned, it gave me the confidence boost I needed to kill the casters and make my way into the room filled with more shades. Sometimes confidence is a bad thing. Don't be like me, stay humble, otherwise someone will do it for you. But in all seriousness, dying here would have been the worst. The boss room is literally just up these stairs and I hadn't opened the shortcut. So if I died I'd have to make my way through everything again. Thankfully I didn't die and managed to get to Pontiff Sullivan with summons. I'm sure that's made some people pop a blood vessel. Pontiff is probably my third favourite boss in DS3. I love his design, he uses a greatsword and an ultra greatsword, is pretty aggressive, and he summons a clone of himself. Depending on your approach, the clone could be a way to see if Pontiff is going to use a special attack against you. The clone has its own attack pattern, but will always perform the special attack before Pontiff does it himself. Using summons lets me stay at a distance and not have all the aggro. It does make it easier, but I knew if I was fighting Pontiff by myself, I would have a much harder time. I still didn't beat him on my first try. I did think I could have tried the parry strategy on my second attempt, but I got hit as soon as I walked in and decided to stay away. Even the killing blow was a ranged attack. Beating Pontiff, I was able to explore the courtyard, and this is where I was confused. There are giants, the priest from the cathedral, a couple guys from Dran Lake, and more silver knights. That's when I realised I'm making my way to Anor Londo, and yep, this gave me a lot of grief. The silver knights in DS3 hit harder than the ones in DS1, but also have delayed attacks, so when you think they're going in for a swing, your parry will miss. This happened a lot, and I really can't get parrying down for Dark Souls 3, and that's a skill issue. I can't blame the game when I've seen other people do the parries. I finally managed to parry this knight with the red eyes, only for him to survive by a pixel of health and instantly swing in behind himself to catch me. I don't want to sound like a whiny bitch, but seriously? I don't like this boss, not because his top half is Gwendolyn, but because his title of Devourer of Gods being an in-universe way of explaining why he's able to use a wide variety of moves which have no real connection to each other. He has the Soul Spear and Homing Missile spells from Gwendolyn. I mean, it kind of makes sense, he is still currently eating him up, as well as those arrows, but then again, the only connection I can make when it comes to Gwendolyn is the fact that he used a crossbow, so it's a bit of a stretch. They also gave him the Life Hunt Scythe, which is from another boss in DS1. The spear he's holding might be a unique item to Aldrich, but the thing is, the design of it looks very much like Nito's sword. Actually, scratch that, it is Nito's sword, just on a stick. The fight isn't hard, and in fact he has a fairly squishy health pool in comparison to other bosses. It's just his magic defense is high and my main source of damage is magic. The only difficulty the boss provides is if he stands still during his volley. Yes, he does teleport around, but that doesn't add difficulty to the fight, instead that actually just prolongs it. So yeah, I guess there's another Lord of Cinder fight that's just disappointing. At this point I thought I'd go back to the Undead Graves. I wanted to get more materials to upgrade my weapon. There are two giant lizards. I thought about fighting them but saw the stupidly low damage I was doing to it, so I decided to go to the boss instead. It's Gundyr, but this time he's just a dude in armor the whole fight. I underestimated him and that was a huge mistake. Champion Gundyr isn't a boss that has a phase 2 like his Udex counterpart. He's all man, and he makes you remember that. He hits hard, moves quickly, has a feint of an opening which leads to you being punched for thinking you can counter, and a launcher where he kicks you mid-fall. Going in thinking, I can take him, was stupid. What's even dumber is I tried 5 times before I took the hint. So instead, I decided to go to the Irilith dungeons. I know when I've reached a wall. I forgot how big this place is. What I didn't forget was the jailers who reduce your health just because you decided to look at them funny, or this creepy thing. I still don't know what they're called. A wretch? Yeah, that's not how I describe them. The design isn't what creeps me out the most, it's the sounds they make and it's always a room away, but the layout of the dungeons makes you wonder just how far away they actually are, or which room they're in. They always make me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to focus too much on the dungeon because even though this place is surprisingly big, it's still a dungeon and there's not a lot to see. I know, who'd have thought jail cells would look identical to each other. It feels like this is one of those places made to connect zones. After getting past this room full of jailers, which I'm pretty sure when you bring up Irilith Dungeons this is the first place that people think of when it comes to that, you're greeted with the title card for the Profane Capital, which is a huge disappointment of an area. And it sucks because the first enemy you encounter once getting here is a giant gargoyle, and you can just run past it, avoiding what would be a tense fight on a bridge. I know the capital has 2 areas you can visit, but the first you go to, the one you're directed to, is literally, hey, here's some guys to weigh you down a little before you get to the boss. Then there's the actual boss fight itself. I will never be happy with giant fights in these games. They just don't work, and FromSoft gave up as well. You can fight Yhorm normally if you want, but he has a huge health pool and is a battle of attrition, which granted makes it more enjoyable and interesting, or you could do the intended way and use the Storm Ruler and spam the fuck out of its special attack. If you do the questline for Sigurd, he will join the fight with his own Storm Ruler as well, and this will make the fight go a lot quicker. Yhorm being a Lord of Cinder and his fight being boiled down to hold L2 and press R1 is a huge disappointment. Just like Rykard in Elden Ring, or Storm King in Demon's Souls for the older people. Giant bosses just don't work, and it's even worse when the special weapon used to fight them is in the same room. If I was someone who had a specific weakness, I'd make sure to put it as far away as possible to where I would live. I know the lore behind Yhorm and Storm Ruler being right next to his throne. I will admit that visually Yhorm is a cool looking fight, and I like how one hit from Storm Ruler enrages him, or a critical if you were doing it the long way, but still could have been executed better. Now that I've got that out of my system, let's go to Lothric Castle. There's not a lot I can remember off the top of my head when thinking of this place. There's the internals which look very medieval, I know, a very unique take on the architecture. I could talk about the dragons, but they don't really do anything. You can attack their feet. Seriously, what is it with Miyazaki and feet? I want to say he's just fucking with us now and embracing the memes. There's just nothing to talk about. It's a castle, what more do you want? I could talk about the boss fight. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that. Dragon Slayer armor, Ornstein 3.0. Look, he was cool in DS1, he was copy-pasted in DS2 but completely optional. This though? They just won't stop reminding us of Ornstein. Although I'm glad that he's not the original but given a different weapon and moveset. As much as I love Ornstein, he is fairly basic and easy in a 1v1. Dragon Slayer armor, however, is a whole different beast. The appearance is the only thing that's similar. I'm pretty sure most people put him very high up in their boss tier list, and I can see why. He's fun, very easy to deal with attacks, you get 5 business days to respond to them, he's just a fun fight. I like that you can stagger him and the way he regains his composure does damage. The pilgrim butterflies in the background that shoot beams adds complexity to the fight. The bridge railing is destructible, so you could be pushed off the edge by an attack, or roll off by accident. There's nothing difficult about Dragon Slayer, it's just fun, and that's all that matters. After beating him, I thought, hey, let's fight some dragons. So I made my way to the secret area of the game. I don't want to talk too much about this place as I don't want to spoil the whole area. I think it's really well designed and gives a lot of environmental storytelling. I will say though, the ancient wyvern it's a thing. You don't really fight it. You fight the man serpents and they are annoying. I mean, they're annoying in general, mainly the big guys, but adding in the fire breath from the wyvern, it makes the entire thing stressful. I didn't first try it, it took me a few attempts. In fact, one of the most bullshit deaths I had was from the plunging attack on the head not connecting. I wanted to give up at that point, but I finally did it and progressed through the place. I'm not going to show more, don't worry, we'll be back for the end boss, but something to keep in mind is Archdragon Peak's enemy variety is designed to punish you whenever you feel confident, just like how I thought I could fight this guy. I chose to make some progress to the story, and I wanted to feel better after being obliterated by a half-naked man with a rapier, so I went to the Grand Archives, which is basically Duke's Archive 2.0. I know it's not the most creative thing to say, but seriously, it is. Just bigger and filled with more branching paths. The crystal stage shows up again and teleports around the place, and I realized just how much inspiration Elden Ring took from older FromSoft games. The enemy that teleports around in Carrion Study Hall clearly drew inspiration from the crystal stage here. Both are annoying, but at least Grand Archives doesn't have the spider hands jumping you while exploring the area, which makes it better. I like that there's an outdoor area to this place as well. It reminds you it's still technically part of Lothric Castle, and the view you get from it is amazing. The gargoyles show up here too, only this time there's some difficulty to them. Still easy, but a lot better than the ones that you fight in the Profane Capital. Although I'm not sure what happened to the AI of this one. It's like he saw me and thought ending himself would be the more enjoyable activity. It's time to fight the Twin Princes. I'm a big fan of twin fights in games. I think my first memory of one of these fights was from Prince of Persia 2 Thrones, which was painful, but they synergized really well with each other, and the satisfaction I got after beating them was worth it. I don't know what it is, but for some reason they were challenging, but I seem to have a hard time on this playthrough. Lorien by himself isn't difficult and his attacks are easy to dodge. It took me a while to realize what was wrong. I was fighting him with a greatsword. My memory of fighting these two was dual wielding fast weapons, so thinking I could go in for an extra hit before he attacks was stupid of me. After beating Lorien, Lothric joins the fight and adds to the chaos. You already had Lorien teleporting, but now you have Lothric on his back making homing missiles and sometimes shooting a holy version of Soul Spear. These two complement each other really well, and once you've downed Lorien, Lothric becomes vulnerable and you can get a few swings in. You can technically hit Lothric while he's still on Lorien's back, but you have to position yourself right behind them, and you don't get much of an opportunity for that. While watching the footage again, I saw myself improve, but what's annoying is the kill itself was me exploiting Lorien's AI. I realized he wouldn't teleport if I stayed within mid-range and shooting him with spells, but also he couldn't crawl to me with chairs in the way. So I did that and beat the shit out of Lothric until I got that victory screen. I was pretty happy when I got that victory screen, although I did remember, these two are cripples. I'm a bad person. With all 4 Lords of Cinder beaten, I made my way back to Firelink to get to the kiln of the First Flame. Looking a lot different to what it was like in Dark Souls 1. You instantly get into a boss fight, just like with Gwyn in the first game, but Soul of Cinder is more mechanically complex compared to him, and something I found out after a few attempts was you can't parry him in phase 1. Which is really weird. Majority of the time he's swinging his sword at you, but nope, can't parry it. I guess they just didn't want a repeat of Gwyn. His first phase is harder than his second in my opinion. He can switch between 4 different fighting styles: sword, lance, katana, and magic. And if you think of it this way, he's Dante.
This party's getting crazy.
Sword being Swordmaster, Lance is Royal Guard, Katana is Trickster, and Magic is Gunslinger. I know that the different fighting styles is due to him being made up of all the people who kept the flame going, but I kinda wish Dante was in that group of people. After getting Dante of Cinders to his second phase, he finally goes into being Gwyn. You can parry him this time, but I chose to fight him like the Chad gamer I am. Yeah, he got me with his combo, and what I like is when he goes into that combo, the boss music adds a piano score to the mix, something reminiscent to the score used in the original game. I said phase 2 was easier, and even though I died, I ended up beating him, and you guessed it, with cheese. I just shot at him from mid-range with Soul Arrow until he died. I had like 20 attempts on him and died in phase 1 for the vast majority of those attempts. I was done at this point. I had fond memories of fighting him, and Solar Cinder is one of the best fights in Dark Souls 3. Keyword being 1. The Nameless King is the best fight in DS3. This guy swoops in on the back of a drake, has a sword spear that brings your confidence down to the negatives, and throws lightning spears when flying around. When I first saw this guy, I was in awe with how cool he looked, and that stuff I just said, that was his first phase, which is the easy part. Fighting Nameless King himself in phase 2, you realize this is a boss that will put you in your place. He's got a wide variety of attacks, he's able to close the gap very quickly, hits like a truck, and is able to roll catch you. The wind particles that appear after every swing are a physical object that doesn't just obscure your vision of him, but you could accidentally roll into it, leaving yourself open for an attack. I'm not going to say he was the hardest fight for me, that goes to Solar Cinder, but the best and the most memorable is Nameless King. Everyone who's played DS3 always talks about him fondly, and if I could, I'd have died on purpose just to keep fighting him. Really wish they put bonfire aesthetics into DS3. I was worried I made the game easier by fighting most of the bosses with summons, but that fear was gone when I remembered the first time playing Dark Souls 3 in 2016. Abyss Watchers forced me to uninstall the game, Pontiff took well over 20 attempts, Solar Cinder, way more than this playthrough, and Nameless King, this guy beat me into submission way more than the 5 or 6 attempts I had in this run. I realise I'm just better at playing Souls-like games now than I was back in 2016. Also, realistically speaking, summons do make the fights easier, just look at Dragon Slayer armor. I should have done that fight by myself. I wish I did it by myself. Initially, I wasn't enjoying Dark Souls 3 as much as I remember, and that's probably because my taste in games have changed over the near decade since its release. Plus, over time, Souls-likes have become more and more accessible. Even Elden Ring is more accessible than Dark Souls. But it became a more enjoyable game as I was progressing through the story. The combat is where Dark Souls 3 shines the most, and the boss fights are the best in the whole trilogy. But if I was to pick any of the 3 to boot up and chill, it'd be Dark Souls 1. It's my favourite of the trilogy. Maybe nostalgia is the reason for it, or maybe there are design decisions I prefer more. Yes, the latter half of DS1 is a shit show and I hated it, but those initial few hours of getting from Firelink to the Burg, Parish, and looping back to Firelink is a design I really like. If you haven't played the trilogy or haven't played them in a while, it's definitely worth going back to. I didn't go into the DLC for Dark Souls 3, not because I felt like it would be too hard for me, I've done it before, but I didn't feel like I needed to. I was able to get enough fun from just the base game alone. I love the DLCs, but I can't bring myself to actually go into the Painted World or Ring City. Plus, I really don't want to have to fight Sister Fried, and I don't want to deal with Half-Light and his bullshit. Overall, I enjoyed my revisit of the games. I was hit with a wave of nostalgia and surprised the most by Dark Souls 2. I regret not playing it sooner. It's not the best in the series, and I didn't even give it that much praise either, but it's nice seeing the hate it got is now being re-evaluated by people and they're actually enjoying it. I love Dark Souls 3. Its combat and boss fights are some of the best FromSoft have made, but I just wish the game didn't reference or feel like it relied so much on reminding you of Dark Souls 1, at least initially. The game does hold up, and it still holds up even now. Just look at how many people have come from other Souls-likes just to play Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. They're still enjoyable, they still hold up, they're just really good games. And I think part of this is because we're not going to get an Elden Ring 2, at least not anytime soon. We're not getting Bloodborne 2 because that's going to Nintendo or something else. It's been over a decade since Dark Souls 3 has basically completed the trilogy, so we're never going to get a Dark Souls 4. Armored Core is not Dark Souls, and Sekiro, even though I've not played it, probably never going to get a sequel, so yeah. But that's okay, because we can still enjoy these games, even over a decade later.